You are out of line.
Bradley Harrison grabbed the old black janitor by the collar of his worn uniform and slammed him against the boardroom wall. The executives around the mahogany table froze mid-laugh. "You dare speak in my meeting, you're nothing but a mop pusher." Bradley's face twisted with disgust as he tightened his grip. "Get on your knees and clean up that coffee you spilled. Now." The 58-year-old man lowered himself slowly, his weathered hands pressing against the cold floor. But his eyes held something Bradley Harrison had never learned to recognize. Not fear, not submission, something far more dangerous. In exactly 47 minutes, the same janitor would stand at the head of that table and watch Bradley Harrison's entire world collapse. Because Marcus Thompson wasn't just pushing a cleaning cart through these halls. He owned 67% of everything Bradley thought belonged to him. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below which city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The elevator doors opened at 6:47 a.m., and Marcus Thompson stepped onto the ground floor of Apex Technologies, pushing a cleaning cart with squeaky wheels. His janitor's uniform hung loose on his frame, deliberately chosen 2 sizes too big. The slight stoop in his shoulders had taken 3 days to perfect. Nobody looked twice at old black men pushing cleaning carts. That was precisely what he was counting on. Raymond Jenkins, the night security guard, looked up from his desk and offered a tired smile. "Morning, Mr. Marcus. You're here early again." "Old habits?" Marcus replied, his voice carrying a softness that didn't match the sharpness in his eyes. "How's that little girl of yours?" Raymond's face lit up. "Tasha started kindergarten last week. Smart as a whip, that one. Already reading better than kids twice her age." "You keep encouraging her. Education is the one thing nobody can ever take away." "That's exactly what my grandmother used to say." Raymond leaned closer, dropping his voice. "Listen, Mr. Marcus, be careful today. I overheard Mr. Harrison on the phone last night after everyone left. He was angry about something, real angry. When that man gets in a mood, he takes it out on whoever's closest." "I appreciate the warning, son." "I mean it. Last month he got a janitor fired for walking too slowly past his office. The month before that, he had security escort out a cleaning lady because she accidentally knocked on his door during a call." Raymond shook his head. "Man's got something broken inside him." Marcus nodded slowly, filing away every word. "Some men are like that. They build themselves up by tearing others down." "Well, just stay off the executive floor if you can. That's his territory." "I'll keep that in mind." Marcus pushed his cart toward the service elevator, but before he could press the button, a voice cut through the lobby like a knife. "You, janitor, stop right there." Marcus turned to find Bradley Harrison striding toward him. Expensive Italian shoes clicking against the marble floor. The CFO's suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His tie was perfectly knotted. His hair was perfectly styled. Everything about him screamed power and privilege, and the absolute certainty that the world existed to serve his needs. "Is there a problem, sir?" Marcus asked, keeping his eyes lowered. Bradley stopped 3 feet away, looking Marcus up and down like he was examining something unpleasant stuck to his shoe. "You're the new one, started Monday." "Yes, sir." "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Marcus raised his eyes, and for just a fraction of a second, something passed between them. Bradley's expression flickered confusion, maybe, or the instinctive recognition that something wasn't quite right. But the moment passed, and Bradley's sneer returned. "What's your name?" "Marcus, sir." "Marcus what?" "Williams, sir. Marcus Williams." Bradley stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "Let me tell you how things work around here, Marcus Williams. This building has a hierarchy. At the top are people like me, people who create value, who make decisions, who matter. At the bottom are people like you, people who clean up after us. Do you understand the difference?" "Yes, sir." "I'm not sure you do." Bradley's voice dropped to something almost intimate in its cruelty. "I've been watching you for 3 days. You don't shuffle like the others. You don't keep your head down low enough. You look around too much like you're studying things, like you think you belong here." Marcus's heart rate increased slightly, but his expression remained unchanged. "I apologize if I've given that impression, sir. I'm just trying to learn the building layout so I can do my job efficiently." "Your job is to be invisible. Can you manage that?" "Yes, sir." "We'll see." Bradley adjusted his cuffs, a gesture of dismissal. "Stay off the executive floors during business hours. I don't want to see your face up there. If I do, you'll be out of this building before you can empty another trash can. Are we clear?" "Perfectly clear, sir." Bradley turned and walked away without another word. Raymond watched from his security desk, his hands clenched into fists beneath the counter. As soon as Bradley disappeared into the elevator, Marcus pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. "He's suspicious, moving faster than expected. Have the documents ready by tonight instead of tomorrow." The response came 30 seconds later from Patricia Williams, his lawyer of 20 years. "Are you sure that's incredibly fast?" "I'm sure. This can't wait." Marcus pocketed his phone and resumed pushing his cart. His hands were steady, his breathing was even, but inside, a fire that had been banked for 10 years was starting to burn again. The morning hours passed in a blur of observations. Marcus moved through the lower floors, methodically emptying trash cans, mopping floors, cleaning bathrooms. Invisible work done by invisible people, but his eyes missed nothing. At 8:15, he witnessed a supervisor in the marketing department call a young black woman into his office. "Keisha, we need to talk about your appearance." "My appearance, sir?" "Your hair, those braids, they're not appropriate for client-facing meetings." "But sir, this is a protective style. It's professional and neat." "It's distracting. It makes a statement, and in this company, we don't make statements. We present a unified professional image. If you want to advance here, you need to look the part. You understand what I'm saying?" Marcus watched Keisha's face cycle through hurt anger and finally that terrible resignation that came from being told, decoupled the same thing too many times. "Yes, sir, I understand." "Good. I've scheduled you for internal projects only until you address the situation, that's all." Keisha walked out of the office with her head held high, but Marcus saw her hands shaking. He saw her duck into the bathroom. He heard faintly the sound of crying through the door. He memorized the supervisor's name, added it to the list growing in his mind. At 9:30, Marcus positioned himself near the water cooler on the 7th floor, refilling the paper cup dispenser, while two senior executives discussed a recent promotion decision. "So Rodriguez got passed over again. Third time. But what can you do? The guy's qualified on paper, but there's just something. I don't know, he doesn't fit." "Fit what?" "The team, the culture, you know how it is? Harrison says we need people who can golf with clients, go to the right restaurants, blend in at industry events. Rodriguez is good at his job, but he's not one of us. His numbers are better than Thompson's." "Numbers aren't everything. Thompson went to Princeton. His father knows half the board. Those things matter." "I guess you're right." Marcus finished with the paper cups and moved on, but he didn't forget a single word. At 10:45, something happened that nearly broke his cover. He was cleaning the windows outside the conference room on the 12th floor when Bradley Harrison walked in with Catherine Reynolds, the CEO. They didn't notice him, nobody ever noticed the cleaning staff, and their conversation carried clearly through the glass. "The Westfield acquisition is on track," Bradley was saying. "We close next month, and then the real work begins." "I'm still concerned about cultural integration," Catherine replied. "Westfield has very strong diversity initiatives. Their employees are loyal to those programs. If we dismantle everything immediately, we're not buying their culture, Catherine. We're buying their technology and their market share. Everything else is dead weight." Bradley pulled up something on his tablet. "Look at these numbers. Their DEI department costs $3 million annually. $3 million spent on what sensitivity training employee resource groups. It's waste, pure and simple. Their retention rates are excellent. Their innovation metrics are above industry average. There might be a connection." "There's no connection. Talented people stay because we pay well and offer good benefits. Period. All the rest is window dressing for public relations." Bradley set down the tablet. "When the acquisition closes, I want those programs eliminated within 60 days. We'll keep enough to satisfy legal requirements and nothing more." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "Bradley, I have to be honest with you. This approach concerns me. I've seen companies destroy their cultures by moving too fast. And I've seen companies waste millions on programs that produce nothing but feel-good headlines." Bradley's voice hardened. "This is why the board brought me in, Catherine. To make the hard decisions, to cut the fat, to focus on what actually matters, shareholder value. If you don't have the stomach for it, I can certainly make recommendations about leadership changes." The threat hung in the air between them. Catherine's face went pale. "That won't be necessary," she said quietly. "Good. Then we're aligned. I'll need your signature on these integration plans by end of week." Marcus's hand had stopped moving on the window. His jaw was tight. His pulse was elevated. For just a moment, the mask slipped. And that was when Bradley glanced toward the window. Their eyes met through the glass. Bradley frowned, his gaze sharpening with suspicion. Marcus immediately resumed cleaning, keeping his movements slow and methodical, his expression blank and subservient. After an endless moment, Bradley looked away and continued his conversation with Catherine, but something had changed. Marcus could feel it. Bradley had noticed him. Bradley had seen something. The clock was ticking faster now. At noon, Marcus made his way to the executive dining area on the 15th floor. He wasn't supposed to be there during business hours. Bradley had made that explicitly clear, but he needed to see more. He needed to understand exactly how deep the rot went. He entered through the service door, pushing his cart past the kitchen staff who barely glanced at him. Another invisible worker in an invisible uniform. Bradley Harrison sat at the center table surrounded by 6 senior executives. They were laughing about something, the kind of laughter that usually meant someone else's misery. "So there I am," Bradley was saying, "standing in front of the entire diversity committee, and they're demanding to know why our minority hiring numbers are down for the 3rd quarter in a row. And I tell them with a completely straight face that we're committed to hiring the best candidates regardless of background, and sometimes the best candidates just happen to be white men." More laughter. The look on their faces, priceless. "What did HR say?" someone asked. "What can they say? Michelle Carter runs that department, and she knows better than to push back on me directly. She filed some kind of report, I'm sure, but those things disappear into the system and nothing ever comes of them. Must be nice to be untouchable." "It's not about being untouchable. It's about understanding power." Bradley leaned back in his chair. "Half this board owes me favors. The other half is too scared of what I know about them. And Catherine," he smiled, "Catherine does exactly what I tell her to do because she knows what happens to CEOs who don't align with their CFOs." Marcus continued emptying trash bins, his face betraying nothing while his mind recorded every word. "Speaking of diversity," another executive said, "did you hear about the janitor?" Bradley's expression flickered. "What about him?" "The new one. Marcus something. Jerry in accounting said the guy was asking weird questions in the break room yesterday, wanting to know about company culture, employee satisfaction, stuff like that." "Is that so?" "Jerry thought it was strange. Said the guy seemed too intelligent for a janitor." Bradley's eyes swept the room and landed on Marcus, who was carefully not looking in his direction. "Maybe our friend Marcus is more than he appears," Bradley said slowly. "Or maybe he's just an old man who watches too much news and thinks he has opinions worth sharing." He raised his voice slightly. "Either way, he won't be here much longer." Marcus finished with the trash and pushed his cart toward the exit. But as he passed Bradley's table, the CFO's hand shot out and grabbed his arm. "Not so fast." Marcus stopped, keeping his eyes down. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes, you can help me by explaining why you're on the executive floor during business hours when I specifically told you to stay away." "I apologize, sir. I was assigned to clean this dining area. I can speak to my supervisor about changing the schedule." "You do that." Bradley's grip tightened. "And while you're at it, maybe explain to your supervisor why you've been asking questions about company culture. This isn't a democracy, Marcus. Janitors don't get to have opinions about how we run things." "I understand, sir." "Do you?" Bradley stood still, holding Marcus's arm, forcing him to tilt his head back to maintain the subservient posture. "Because I get the feeling you don't understand anything. I get the feeling you think you're special, that you're different from every other janitor who's come through here." The other executives watched in silence, some looking uncomfortable, others smiling at the show. "Let me tell you what you are, Marcus." Bradley's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried throughout the room. "You are nothing. You are less than nothing. You are the dirt that accumulates on the floor until someone like you comes along to sweep it up. And when I'm done with you, when I decide you've outlived your usefulness, you'll be swept out of here just like all the dirt before you." He released Marcus's arm with a slight shove. "Now get out of my sight, and pray I don't see you on this floor again." Marcus pushed his cart toward the exit without a word. His arm ached where Bradley had gripped it. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained perfectly calm. Behind him, he heard Bradley's voice. "See, gentlemen, that's how you handle the help. You remind them of their place. It's the only language they understand." The laughter followed Marcus all the way to the elevator. At 2:15 p.m., Marcus ducked into an empty stairwell and called Patricia. "I need to move everything to tonight. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning." "Marcus, what happened?" "He grabbed me in front of everyone, called me dirt, said I was less than nothing." Patricia was silent for a long moment. "I could hear it in your voice. You're angry." "I'm beyond angry, but I'm also focused. This man has been running my company like his personal kingdom for years, Patricia. He's destroyed careers. He's created a culture of fear and degradation, and he does it all while hiding behind shareholder value and business necessity. What about due process? What about gathering more evidence? I have enough evidence. I've seen enough. 3 days in this building, and I've witnessed more discrimination, more harassment, more casual cruelty than I thought possible. And the worst part, everyone just accepts it. They've been beaten down so thoroughly that they think this is normal. They think this is how things are supposed to be. So what's the plan? Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., emergency board meeting. I reveal my identity, present the evidence, and remove Bradley Harrison from his position. The board might resist. Bradley has allies. Bradley has 67% of a vote that belongs to me. Let them resist. Let them try to protect him. I'll dissolve the entire board if I have to and rebuild from scratch. Marcus, listen to me carefully. You've spent 10 years building a life away from this company. A quiet life. A peaceful life. If you do this, all of that disappears. You become a public figure again. You become a target again. I know. Do you? Because once you walk into that boardroom, there's no going back. Every news outlet in the country will run this story. Your face will be everywhere. Your past will be dug up and examined. Everything you've worked to leave behind. I know, Patricia. Marcus's voice was firm. And I've made my peace with it. Some things are more important than peace. Some things are more important than comfort. This company was supposed to mean something. It was supposed to be different. And I walked away and I let it become this. His voice cracked slightly. I have to make it right, whatever the cost. Patricia sighed. Then I'll have everything ready by tonight. But Marcus, promise me something. What? Promise me you won't let the anger control you. Promise me you'll stay focused on justice, not revenge. There's a difference. You know there is. Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making things right for everyone Bradley Harrison has hurt. Keep your eyes on them, not on him. I'll try. Do more than try. I've known you for 20 years, Marcus. You're one of the best men I've ever met. Don't let Bradley Harrison turn you into something you're not. Marcus ended the call and leaned against the stairwell wall, breathing slowly. Patricia was right. The anger was dangerous. It clouded judgment. It led to mistakes. But God, how he wanted to see the look on Bradley's face when he realized who had been pushing that cleaning cart. At 3:30 p.m., Marcus witnessed something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. He was cleaning the hallway outside the analytics department when raised voices drew his attention. Through the glass partition, he could see Bradley Harrison standing over a young black man's desk, James Wright, according to the nameplate Marcus had noticed earlier. Explain to me, Bradley said, his voice dangerously quiet, why you thought it was appropriate to question my financial projections in front of the entire department. Sir, I wasn't questioning them. I was just pointing out that the synergy estimate seemed optimistic given Westfield's current market position. Optimistic? Bradley picked up a stack of papers from James's desk and threw them in his face. The pages scattered across the floor. You've been here, 8 months, and you think you understand this business better than me. No, sir, you were just trying to show off, trying to prove you're smarter than everyone else. Is that it? Affirmative Action Hire thinks he can lecture the CFO about financial projections. James's face went rigid. I was hired based on my qualifications, sir. I have an MBA from... I don't care if you have a PhD from Harvard. You don't question me, ever, in any setting, for any reason. Bradley leaned down until his face was inches from James's. Now pick up those papers, all of them, and then write me a detailed apology explaining why you were wrong to embarrass me in front of the team. Sir, I didn't mean to embarrass anyone. Pick up the papers. The entire analytics department watched in silence as James slowly got out of his chair and knelt on the floor, gathering the scattered pages one by one. Marcus stood frozen in the hallway, his hand gripping the mop handle so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Catherine Reynolds appeared at the department entrance. She took in the scene, the kneeling employee, the scattered papers, Bradley's triumphant sneer, and for a moment it seemed like she might say something. Bradley looked at her, just looked, and whatever he saw in his eyes made her turn and walk away without a word. James finished gathering the papers and stood his hands full, his dignity in tatters. Bradley snatched the stack from him and dropped it on the desk. That apology, on my desk by 5. And James, Bradley smiled. The next time you think about questioning me, remember this moment. Remember how it felt to be on your knees while everyone watched. That's where you belong. Bradley walked out of the department, passing Marcus in the hallway without a glance. He was whistling. Marcus waited until Bradley was gone, then pushed his cart into the analytics department. He moved toward James's desk, pretending to empty a nearby trash can. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked quietly. James looked up, startled that anyone was speaking to him. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "I'm fine, thank you." What he did was wrong. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. It matters that he can do it. James laughed bitterly. "I graduated top of my class. I had offers from every major firm in the country. I chose this company because of its reputation for innovation and inclusion. What a joke. Have you reported any of this to who HR is afraid of him? The CEO is afraid of him. The board is in his pocket." James shook his head. "The only way out is to find another job and hope they don't trash my references on the way out." "What if someone could change things?" James looked at Marcus strangely. "You're the new janitor, right, Marcus?" "That's right." "Well, Marcus, let me give you some advice. Don't hope for change. Don't wait for someone to fix things. Just keep your head down, do your job, and get out as soon as you can. This company is broken, and nobody with the power to fix it gives a damn." Marcus nodded slowly. "Thank you for the advice." He pushed his cart away, but as he reached the door, he turned back. "James, what if I told you that someone does give a damn? Someone with the power to change everything?" James stared at him. "I'd say you're crazy, or you're messing with me." "I'm neither." Marcus held his gaze. "Tomorrow morning, watch the news, and remember this conversation." He left James sitting at his desk, confusion and something like hope warring on his face. At 5:00 p.m., most employees began leaving for the day. Marcus made his final rounds through the lower floors, collecting trash and observing the exodus. So many people, heads down, shoulders slumped, trudging toward the exits like prisoners at the end of a long shift. This wasn't what he had built. This wasn't what he had dreamed of when he started this company in a garage 30 years ago, with nothing but an idea and the stubborn refusal to accept the limitations others tried to place on him. He had wanted to create something different, something better. A place where talent mattered more than connections, where innovation flourished because diverse perspectives were valued, where a black kid from Oakland could rise to the top based on merit. And he had succeeded for a while, until he stepped away, until he trusted others to protect what he had built, until men like Bradley Harrison turned his dream into this nightmare. At 5:30 p.m., Marcus received a text from Raymond. "Harrison's assistant just put out an urgent request. He wants security footage of everywhere you've been in the building for the past 3 days. Something's up. Be careful." Marcus typed back, "Thank you, I'll handle it." At 6:15 p.m., Marcus was cleaning the conference room on the 15th floor when the door opened behind him. "I thought I might find you here." He turned to find Michelle Carter, the HR director, standing in the doorway. She closed the door behind her and crossed her arms. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm just finishing up my shift, ma'am. Is there something you need cleaned?" "Drop the act." Michelle's voice was sharp but not hostile. "I've been watching you for 3 days. You move differently than any janitor I've ever seen. You observe everything, analyze everything. When Harrison was berating James Wright today, your face showed more anger in 5 seconds than most people allow themselves to feel in a lifetime." "Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about. And then there's this." Michelle pulled out a photograph. It was old-faded, showing a young black man in a suit standing in front of the Apex Technologies building on its opening day. "This picture has hung in the lobby for 30 years. I walk past it every day, and today, for the first time, I actually looked at it." Marcus said nothing. The man in this photo built this company from nothing. He started with a revolutionary idea and the determination to prove that black entrepreneurs could compete at the highest levels of the tech industry. He succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, and then 10 years ago, he quietly stepped away from public life. No one really knew why. Michelle set the photo on the conference table. "That man's name is Marcus Thompson. And unless I've completely lost my mind, he's standing in front of me right now, wearing a janitor's uniform and pretending to be someone named Marcus Williams." The silence stretched between them. Marcus studied Michelle's face, the intelligence in her eyes, the firm set of her jaw, the way she held herself like someone who had been fighting battles for a very long time. "What gave me away?" he finally asked. "The eyes. The man in that photo has the same eyes, the same intensity, the same way of looking at people like he can see straight through them." Michelle shook her head. "I can't believe nobody else noticed." "People see what they expect to see. They expect a janitor to be invisible, so that's what I became." Why would the founder of this company come back as a cleaning man?" Marcus picked up the photograph and looked at it. The young man staring back at him seemed like a stranger, hopeful, ambitious, certain that he could change the world. Because I needed to see for myself, he said. 6 months ago I received a letter, anonymous. It said the company I built had become something I would be ashamed of. I didn't want to believe it, but I started investigating anyway. What I found... He trailed off. I know what you found, Michelle said. I've been documenting it for years. The discrimination, the harassment, the settlements that get buried with NDAs, the careers that get destroyed when people speak up. Her voice hardened. Bradley Harrison has turned this company into his personal kingdom, and anyone who challenges him gets crushed. Why haven't you done anything? With what power? I'm HR director in name only. Every complaint I file gets dismissed or buried. Every policy change I propose gets vetoed. Bradley has the board in his pocket, and the CEO is terrified of him. Michelle's composure cracked slightly. Do you know how many times I've thought about quitting, about just walking away and letting this place burn? Why didn't you? Because if I leave, there's nobody left to document anything. Nobody left to help employees file complaints, even if those complaints go nowhere. Nobody left to witness what's happening and wait for the day when maybe somehow someone with actual power might finally do something about it. She looked at Marcus with something like hope and suspicion mixed together. Is that why you're here, to actually do something? Marcus set down the photograph. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. there's going to be an emergency board meeting. I'm going to reveal my identity present evidence of everything Bradley Harrison has done and remove him from his position. The board will fight you. Bradley has allies. I own 67% of this company. Let them fight. Michelle stared at him. 67%? All this time you've been the majority shareholder and nobody knew. My holdings are distributed across 7 different entities. It's all perfectly legal, just structured for privacy. The board secretary has access to the full records, but she knows better than to share that information without my authorization. My God, Michelle sat down heavily in one of the conference chairs. All this time we could have stopped him. All this time you could have... I know. Marcus's voice was heavy with regret. I stepped away because I thought the company was strong enough to maintain its values without me. I thought new leadership would protect what I built. I was wrong, and a lot of people have suffered because of my mistake. So what happens now? Now I fix it, but I'm going to need your help. What kind of help? Everything you've documented, every incident, every complaint, every settlement, I need it all compiled and ready to present to the board tomorrow morning. Michelle nodded slowly. I can have it ready, but Marcus, Mr. Thompson, you need to understand something. Bradley Harrison is not going to go quietly. When he realizes who you are, when he understands what you're about to do to him, he's going to fight back with everything he has, and he fights dirty. I know. Do you? Because I've seen what happens to people who try to take him down. They get smeared. They get threatened. Their families get dragged into it. He has connections in media and politics in places you wouldn't expect. Michelle leaned forward. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to have every aspect of your life put under a microscope while Bradley Harrison tries to destroy you? Marcus thought about the last 10 years, the quiet life he had built, the peace he had found away from the spotlight, all of it about to disappear. I'm ready, he said. Are you? Michelle stood and extended her hand. I've been waiting for this moment for 5 years. I'm more than ready. They shook hands. One more thing, Marcus said. Tonight Bradley is going to get my background check results. He's going to find out that Marcus Williams doesn't exist. He's going to know something is wrong. What do you want to do about it? Nothing. Let him worry. Let him wonder. Let him spend all night trying to figure out who I really am. Marcus smiled the first genuine smile he had allowed himself since entering this building. Tomorrow morning he'll find out. At 8:00 p.m., Marcus left the Apex Technologies building through the service entrance for the last time as a janitor. Raymond was at the security desk starting his night shift. Mr. Marcus Longday. The longest. Marcus paused at the desk. Raymond, can I ask you something? Of course. If you could change one thing about this company, what would it be? Raymond thought about it. Honestly, I'd want people to be treated like people, not like numbers or tools or problems. It's to be managed. There are good folks here, Mr. Marcus, really good people. They just get beaten down every day until they forget what it feels like to be valued. And what if I told you that's about to change? Raymond gave him a strange look. I'd say that's a nice dream, But dreams don't come true for people like us. Sometimes they do, Raymond. Sometimes you just need someone to wake up and make them come true. Marcus extended his hand. Thank you for your kindness these past few days. It meant more than you know. Raymond shook his hand, confused. Mr. Marcus, you're talking like you're saying goodbye. In a way I am, but Raymond, watch the news tomorrow morning. And remember that kindness always matters. Even the smallest act of decency can mean everything to someone who's been treated as less than human. He walked out into the evening air, leaving Raymond staring after him with a puzzled expression. At 9:00 p.m. in his office at Apex Technologies, Bradley Harrison received a phone call that made his blood run cold. Mr. Harrison, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The background check on the janitor, Marcus Williams. Sir, the man doesn't exist. Bradley gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean he doesn't exist? There's no Marcus Williams matching his description in any database. No social security history, no previous employment records. The cleaning company says they were hired by a third party to place him in our building, but they can't trace who made the request or why. Someone planted him here deliberately. It appears so, sir. What would you like us to do? Bradley's mind raced through the possibilities. A competitor, a journalist, a federal investigator. Someone had been watching him for 3 days, observing everything, hearing everything. If any of that was recorded... Find out who he really is, Bradley said. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how much it costs. I want to know his real identity before he shows up for work tomorrow. Yes, sir. There's one more thing. What? The janitor, whoever he was seen talking to Michelle Carter in the conference room on 15 about an hour ago. They were in there for almost 20 minutes with the door closed. Bradley felt something cold settle in his stomach. Michelle Carter, the HR director who filed reports that went nowhere. The woman who documented everything but could never prove anything. The thorn in his side that he had been meaning to remove for years. Get me the security footage from that meeting. We already tried, sir. The camera in that conference room malfunctioned about an hour before the meeting. We have no recording. Malfunctioned? Yes, sir. How convenient. Bradley ended the call and sat in the darkness of his office thinking. Someone was making a move against him. Someone with resources and planning and access to the inside of his operation. The janitor was just a piece on a larger board. But who was playing and what did they want? Bradley picked up his phone again and dialed his lawyer. Robert, it's Bradley. I need you to prepare for a potential crisis. Someone has been gathering information about me and I don't know who or why. I want all our defenses ready by morning. What kind of defenses? Everything. NDAs, legal threats, media contacts. If someone is trying to take me down, we need to be ready to fight back with overwhelming force. Bradley, what exactly is going on? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He ended the call and stared out the window at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, his enemy was preparing their next move. Bradley Harrison had destroyed a lot of people over the years. He had buried scandals, crushed careers, and made problems disappear through a combination of power money and ruthless intimidation. But this felt different. This felt personal. He just didn't know how personal it was about to become. At 11:00 p.m., Marcus Thompson sat in the living room of the modest house he had rented under his false identity. Spread across the coffee table were decades of documents, photographs, and memories. The original business plan for Apex Technologies written on a legal pad in his cramped handwriting. The first press coverage of his company, a small article in a local newspaper about a promising black entrepreneur. The cover of Fortune magazine from 15 years ago featuring his face and the headline, The Man Who Changed Silicon Valley. And the letter. The anonymous letter that had arrived 6 months ago and changed everything. The company you built has become something you would be ashamed of. Come see for yourself. Shit. Marcus still didn't know who had sent it. Someone inside the company, obviously. Someone who knew the history and understood what Apex Technologies was supposed to represent. Someone who had been waiting, hoping for the founder to return. Tomorrow he would find out. Tomorrow a lot of things would be revealed. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Everything is ready. Documents ownership, verification, legal authority. Whatever happens tomorrow, you have the power to do what needs to be done. He typed back, Thank you, Patricia, for everything. Just promise me you'll stay focused on the mission, not the man. I'll try. Do more than try. I believe in you, Marcus. I've always believed in you. Don't let Bradley Harrison make you into something you're not. Marcus set down the phone and looked at the photographs spread across the table. The young man in those pictures had been so certain he could change the world. So confident that talent and hard work could overcome any obstacle. That young man had been naive. He had learned over decades that the world was more complicated than he had imagined, that systems of power didn't crumble easily, that progress was measured in inches, not miles. But he had also learned something else, something that Bradley Harrison would never understand. True power wasn't about money or position or the ability to make people afraid. True power was about having the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it cost you everything. It was about lifting others up instead of pushing them down. It was about building something that would outlast your own life and make the world better for those who came after. Tomorrow, Marcus Thompson was going to reclaim his company. He was going to remove the corruption that had taken root in his absence. He was going to show Bradley Harrison and everyone like him that there were still people in this world who believed in justice. And then he was going to rebuild. Brick by brick, employee by employee, he was going to turn Apex Technologies back into the beacon of hope he had always intended it to be. It wouldn't be easy. It would take years. It would require sacrifices he couldn't yet imagine. But it was the right thing to do, and sometimes that was all that mattered. Marcus gathered the photographs and documents and put them carefully away. Then he went to bed, setting his alarm for 6:00 a.m. Tomorrow, the janitor was going to become the boss again, and Bradley Harrison was going to learn the hardest possible way that the man he had degraded, humiliated, and called less than nothing was about to end his career in front of everyone who had ever laughed at his jokes. The last thought Marcus had before sleep took him was the look he had seen in James Wright's eyes after Bradley forced him to his knees. Tomorrow, James would see something different. Tomorrow, everyone would see that it was possible to fight back against the Bradley Harrisons of the world. Tomorrow, everything would change. The alarm shattered the silence at exactly 6:00 a.m. Marcus Thompson opened his eyes and lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling of the rented house that had been his home for the past week. Today was the day. After 10 years of silence, after 3 days of humiliation, after a lifetime of being underestimated, today he would reclaim everything. He showered and dressed slowly, choosing each item with deliberate care. The charcoal gray suit had been custom-made in Milan 15 years ago, back when he still attended board meetings and shareholder conferences. It still fit perfectly. The white shirt was crisp and starched. The tie was deep burgundy, almost black, the color of authority. When he looked in the mirror, the janitor was gone. In his place stood the man who had built Apex Technologies from nothing. His phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. Patricia Williams. "I'm outside," she said. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 10 years. Marcus, I need to tell you something before we go in. Bradley Harrison didn't sleep last night. My sources say he's been making calls since midnight trying to figure out who you are. He knows something's coming. He just doesn't know what." "Good, let him worry." "There's more. He called an emergency meeting of his own this morning at 7:30. He's trying to get ahead of whatever he thinks is happening." Marcus smiled grimly. "Then I suppose I should attend his meeting." "Marcus, that's not the plan. We agreed you would reveal yourself at the official board meeting at 8:00. Plans change. Bradley Harrison has spent 3 days humiliating me in front of his colleagues. I think it's only fair that I return the favor." Silence on the other end of the line. Then Patricia sighed. "You're going to walk into his meeting as the janitor, aren't you? One last time. This is personal for you, I can hear it. It became personal when he grabbed me by the collar and called me less than nothing. It became personal when he made James Wright kneel on the floor and pick up papers while everyone watched. It became personal when I realized that every single thing I built has been corrupted by a man who sees human beings as tools to be used and discarded. Just remember what I told you. Justice, not revenge." "I remember." Marcus picked up the janitor's uniform from where he had laid it out the night before. "I'll see you at 8:00. Have the documents ready." "They're ready. Marcus, be careful." "I'm always careful." He ended the call and looked at the uniform in his hands. One more time. One final performance. And then Bradley Harrison would learn the truth. At 7:15 a.m., Marcus Thompson walked into the lobby of Apex Technologies wearing his janitor's uniform for the last time. Raymond Jenkins was just ending his night shift, looking exhausted, but managing a smile when he saw Marcus. "Mr. Marcus, you're early today." "Big day, Raymond. Couldn't sleep." "I hear that. Hey, I don't know what you said to me yesterday, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About dreams coming true and all that." Raymond shook his head. "My grandmother used to say that God works in mysterious ways, that sometimes help comes from places you'd never expect." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. Raised 6 kids on her own after my grandfather died. Never complained, never gave up. She used to tell us that no matter how dark things get, morning always comes." Raymond looked at Marcus with something like hope in his tired eyes. "Is morning coming, Mr. Marcus, for this place?" "Yes, Raymond. Morning is coming, very soon." Marcus pushed his cart toward the elevator, leaving Raymond staring after him with a puzzled expression. The doors closed, and Marcus pressed the button for the 15th floor. The executive floor. Bradley Harrison's territory. At 7:28 a.m., Marcus pushed his cleaning cart past Bradley's assistant, a nervous young woman named Jennifer, who looked like she hadn't slept either. "You can't be here," Jennifer said, standing up from her desk. "Mr. Harrison specifically said no cleaning staff during the morning meeting." "I apologize, ma'am. I was told there was an urgent cleaning issue in the conference room, something about a spill." "There's no spill. You need to leave right now." The door to the conference room opened, and Bradley Harrison's voice cut through the hallway. "Jennifer, what's the holdup? We need to start this meeting immediately." "Sir, the janitor is here. He says there's a cleaning issue." Bradley appeared in the doorway, and his eyes locked onto Marcus. For a long moment, neither man moved. Bradley's face cycled through surprise recognition and then cold fury. Bradley said. "I told you never to show your face on this floor again." "I apologize, sir. There must have been a miscommunication with the schedule." "Miscommunication." Bradley stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I don't know something is going on?" "I don't know what you mean, sir." "I ran a background check on you last night. Want to know what I found?" "Nothing. No Marcus Williams matching your description exists anywhere. No social security number, no employment history, no address." Bradley's face was inches from Marcus's now. "So I'm going to ask you one time, and you're going to tell me the truth. Who are you and who sent you?" The conference room had gone silent. Through the glass walls, Marcus could see a dozen executives watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Catherine Reynolds sat at the head of the table, her face pale with anxiety. Marcus looked at Bradley Harrison, really looked at him, and allowed a small smile to cross his face. "You want to know who I am? I want the truth, now." "Then perhaps you should invite me into your meeting. I think your colleagues will want to hear this." Something flickered in Bradley's eyes. Uncertainty. Fear. The instinctive recognition that he was no longer in control of this situation. "Fine," Bradley said. "Come in. Let's hear what you have to say." He stepped aside, and Marcus pushed his cleaning cart into the conference room where just yesterday he had been mocked and humiliated. The executive stared at him with confusion and nervous anticipation. Michelle Carter sat near the back, her expression carefully neutral, her hands folded over the folder of evidence she had compiled. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bradley announced, his voice regaining some of its usual confidence, "it appears we have a spy in our midst. This man has been posing as a janitor for the past 3 days, and I intend to find out why." "He's not a spy," Michelle said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "What did you say?" Bradley demanded. "I said he's not a spy." Michelle stood up, folder in hand. "I know exactly who he is, and so would all of you if you ever bothered to look at the photographs in our lobby." Bradley's face twisted with impatience. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Perhaps I should explain," Marcus said. He reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a single document, the ownership certificate that proved his 67% stake in Apex Technologies. He laid it on the conference table. "My name is not Marcus Williams. My name is Marcus Thompson. 30 years ago, I founded this company in a garage with nothing but an idea and the determination to prove that a black man from Oakland could build something that mattered. I succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, including my own." The room had gone completely silent. Catherine Reynolds' hand was pressed against her mouth. Several executives had gone pale. 10 years ago, I stepped away from daily operations. I thought the company was strong enough to maintain its values without me. I thought new leadership would protect what I had built." Marcus's voice hardened. "I was catastrophically wrong." Bradley Harrison stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Denial, shock, fear, and then finally the desperate calculation of a cornered animal. "This is absurd," Bradley said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Anyone can print a fake document. Anyone can claim to be the founder." "Check the board secretary's files," Marcus replied calmly. "She has access to the complete ownership records. My holdings are distributed across 7 entities, but they're all registered and documented. I own 67% of this company. I have owned it since the day I started it." "Sandra," Catherine said to the board secretary, her voice shaking, "is this true?" The secretary, a gray-haired woman who had been with the company for 25 years, nodded slowly. It's true, I've always known. Mr. Thompson asked me to maintain confidentiality about his ownership structure, and I honored that request. You knew, Kenu. Bradley spun toward her. You knew this whole time, and you didn't tell me. You never asked, and frankly, Mr. Harrison, it wasn't any of your business. Bradley's face flushed with rage. He turned back to Marcus, pointing an accusing finger. This is entrapment. You came in here under false pretenses, recorded private conversations, gathered information through deception. None of it will hold up legally. I'll have you in court for years. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, everything Mr. Thompson recorded is perfectly admissible. Patricia Williams entered the conference room, briefcase in hand, followed by 2 associates carrying boxes of documents. Company policy explicitly states that all common areas are subject to monitoring for security purposes. Every employee, including executives, acknowledges this in their annual compliance review. Mr. Harrison, you signed that acknowledgement yourself 3 months ago. This is a setup, Bradley snarled. A coordinated attack designed to remove me from my position. No, Mr. Harrison. Marcus stepped forward, and for the first time he allowed the full weight of his authority to show in his voice. This is accountability, something you've avoided for far too long. He gestured to Michelle Carter, who began distributing copies of her documentation to everyone at the table. What you're receiving is a comprehensive report of discriminatory practices, harassment incidents, and hostile work environment violations that have occurred under Mr. Harrison's leadership over the past 5 years. 78 documented incidents, 23 current employee testimonials, 17 statements from former employees who left specifically because of the culture Mr. Harrison created. These are lies, Bradley said, but his voice was weakening. Disgruntled employees making false accusations. There are also records of 7 discrimination lawsuits that were settled confidentially, totaling over $4 million in payouts. Settlements that Mr. Harrison personally negotiated with strict non-disclosure requirements specifically designed to bury the evidence. Bradley's face had gone ashen. Catherine, you need to shut this down. This is a hostile takeover attempt. It's not a takeover, Marcus said. I already own the company. This is a correction. A long overdue correction. He turned to address the full room. 3 days ago, I entered this building as a janitor because I needed to see for myself what had become of the company I built. What I witnessed broke my heart. I saw talented employees degraded and humiliated for the color of their skin. I saw careers destroyed because people dared to speak up about injustice. I saw a culture of fear and cruelty that has poisoned everything I worked to create. His eyes swept across the executives, many of whom wouldn't meet his gaze. I watched Mayor Harrison force a young man named James Wright to kneel on the floor and pick up scattered papers while the entire department watched in silence. I heard Mr. Harrison announce plans to dismantle every diversity initiative at Westfield Technologies after the acquisition closes. I heard him refer to inclusion programs as woke nonsense and minority employees as problems to be managed. Marcus turned back to Bradley, who had backed against the wall like a trapped animal. And I experienced his treatment personally. 3 days ago in this very building, Mr. Harrison grabbed me by the collar, shoved me against a wall, and told me to get on my knees and clean up coffee I had spilled. He called me boy. He said I was less than nothing. He told me that people like me exist only to serve people like him. The silence in the room was absolute. Mr. Harrison? Marcus said, his voice quiet but carrying the force of 30 years of building fighting and refusing to be diminished. You spent 3 days treating me like dirt because you thought I was powerless. You never imagined that the old black man pushing a cleaning cart through your hallways owned everything you believed belonged to you. He stepped forward until he was face to face with Bradley. Your employment with Apex Technologies is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Your severance package, which you don't deserve, will be detailed in documentation from our legal team. Any attempt to disparage this company or its employees will result in immediate legal action. Bradley's mouth opened and closed several times before words finally emerged. You can't do this. The board will never support The board serves at my pleasure, Marcus interrupted. I own 67% of the voting shares. I don't need their support. I need their compliance. He turned to the assembled executives. Anyone who wishes to stand with Mr. Harrison is welcome to submit their resignation today. Anyone who participated in or enabled his behavior should expect a thorough review of their conduct in the coming weeks. And anyone who believes this company should continue operating as it has been is welcome to seek employment elsewhere. Catherine Reynolds stood slowly, her face a mixture of shame and something that might have been relief. Mr. Thompson, she said, I owe you an apology. I knew what was happening. I witnessed incidents that I should have stopped. I was afraid of the consequences to my own career, and I chose self-preservation over doing what was right." "Yes," Marcus said, "you did." "I understand if you want my resignation." "I don't want your resignation, Ms. Reynolds. I want your commitment. A commitment to help me rebuild what's been destroyed. A commitment to creating the kind of company I originally envisioned. Can you make that commitment?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, I can. I will." "Then we have work to do." Marcus turned back to Bradley, who had gone pale as a ghost. "Mr. Harrison, I believe I asked security to escort you out." As if on cue, 2 security officers appeared in the doorway. One of them was Raymond Jenkins, who had apparently been called up from the lobby. His eyes went wide when he saw Marcus standing at the head of the conference table in his janitor's uniform, commanding the room like the owner he was. "Mr. Marcus," Raymond whispered. "It's Mr. Thompson, actually," Marcus said with a small smile. "But you can still call me Marcus." "I don't understand." "I'll explain later. Right now I need you to escort Mr. Harrison from the building. He no longer works here." Raymond's face transformed from confusion to understanding to something like joy. "Yes, sir, Mr. Thompson, it would be my pleasure." Bradley Harrison's composure finally shattered. "This isn't over," he shouted as Raymond and the other officer took his arms. "You think you can just walk in here and destroy everything I've built? I have connections, I have lawyers, I have friends on this board who won't stand for this kind of treatment." "If any board member wishes to resign in protest, they're welcome to do so," Marcus said calmly. "Their replacement will be announced within the week." "You're making a mistake, a huge mistake. This company will collapse without me. I'm the one who kept the finances strong. I'm the one who made the tough decisions. Without me, you're nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." Bradley was still screaming as security dragged him through the doorway. His voice echoed down the hallway, growing fainter as they moved toward the elevator. "The market will punish you for this. Shareholders will revolt. This is the biggest mistake of your pathetic life." And then silence. Marcus stood at the head of the conference table looking out at the stunned faces of executives who had never imagined this moment could happen. The room felt different now. Lighter. Like a storm had passed and the air was finally clear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said, "I know this morning has been unprecedented. I know you have questions. I know some of you are afraid of what comes next." He walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each person. "Let me tell you what comes next. We are going to rebuild this company from the ground up. Not the technology, not the business strategy, the culture. We are going to create a workplace where every employee is valued for their contributions, not judged by their appearance. Where speaking up about injustice is rewarded, not punished. Where talent is recognized regardless of background." He stopped at the window, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. 30 years ago, I started this company because I wanted to prove something. I wanted to prove that black entrepreneurs could compete at the highest levels. That diversity wasn't a weakness to be managed, but a strength to be leveraged. That doing good and doing well weren't mutually exclusive. He turned back to face the room. "I lost my way when I stepped back. I trusted the wrong people to protect my vision. I won't make that mistake again." Michelle Carter raised her hand tentatively. "Mr. Thompson, what do you need from us right now today? Today, I need you to go back to your departments and tell your people what happened here. Tell them that Bradley Harrison is gone. Tell them that things are going to change. Tell them that if they've experienced discrimination or harassment, they can come forward without fear of retaliation." He paused, his voice softening. "And tell them that I'm sorry. Sorry that it took me so long to come back. Sorry that I let this happen. Sorry that they had to suffer while I was living my quiet life, pretending that the company I built could take care of itself." Patricia cleared her throat. "We should discuss next steps. The media will be all over this within hours. We need to control the narrative." "No, Marcus said. "We need to tell the truth. All of it. I don't want spin doctors managing our message. I want honesty." "Marcus, that's risky. Bradley's lawyers will use everything against us." "Then let them. I'm done hiding. I'm done being strategic about basic human decency." He turned to face his lawyer directly. "Patricia, I know you're trying to protect me. I appreciate it, but the best protection is transparency. We tell the truth, and we let the truth speak for itself." The conference room door opened, and James Wright walked in looking uncertain. Behind him were a dozen other employees, mostly minorities, all watching Marcus with expressions of disbelief and hope. "Is it true?" James asked. "Is Bradley Harrison really gone?" "He's really gone," Marcus confirmed. "And you're really the founder, the Marcus Thompson." "I am." James's eyes filled with tears. Yesterday, he made me kneel on the floor in front of everyone. He told me that's where I belonged. And you were there. I saw you watching. I didn't know who you were, but I saw the anger in your eyes." "I remember," Marcus said softly. "I wanted to step in. I wanted to stop it." "Why didn't you—" Marcus was silent for a long moment. "Because I needed to see how bad it had gotten. I needed to understand the full scope of what Bradley Harrison had created. And honestly, I needed to control my own anger. If I had revealed myself in that moment, I might have done something I regretted." James nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "Now we rebuild. And James, I've read your work. Your analysis of the Westfield acquisition was exactly right. The synergy estimates were inflated, and the integration costs were underestimated. If Bradley had listened to you instead of humiliating you, he might have spotted the problems before they became disasters." James stared at him. "You read my analysis?" "I read everything. For the past 6 months, I've been reviewing every report, every document, every piece of information I could get my hands on. You're talented, James. More talented than Bradley Harrison ever recognized. And in the new Apex technologies, that talent is going to be valued." The morning continued with a series of rapid meetings and announcements. Patricia worked the phones, coordinating with media outlets and preparing statements. Michelle Carter began the process of reviewing every buried complaint and settlement from the past 5 years. Catherine Reynolds met with department heads, explaining the changes and reassuring anxious employees. And through it all, Marcus Thompson remained in the building sometimes, in conferences, sometimes walking through the halls, sometimes simply sitting in the lobby and watching people go about their day. Around 1100 a.m., Raymond Jenkins approached him during a quiet moment. "Mr. Thompson, Marcus, I still don't know what to call you." "Marcus is fine. Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Raymond sat down next to him, looking exhausted, but somehow lighter than he had in days. "Why did you do it? Why did you pretend to be a janitor? You could have just come in here as yourself and fired Harrison on the first day." "I could have," Marcus agreed. "But then I wouldn't have understood what it's really like to work in this building. I wouldn't have felt what it feels like to be treated as less than human. I wouldn't have met people like you, Raymond. People who show kindness to strangers because that's who they are, not because there's anything in it for them." Raymond shook his head in wonder. "All those mornings I thought I was giving you advice, telling you to stay away from Harrison, warning you to be careful. And I appreciated every word. You didn't know who I was, but you looked out for me anyway. That says something about your character, Raymond." "It just seemed like the right thing to do." "It was, and that's exactly the kind of culture I want to build here. A place where doing the right thing is the norm, not the exception." Raymond was quiet for a moment. "My grandmother would have liked you. She always said you could tell a man's character by how he treats people who can't do anything for him." "Your grandmother sounds like someone I would have been honored to know." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching employees move through the lobby with a new energy. Word had spread quickly through the building. The old black janitor was actually the founder. Bradley Harrison was gone. Things were about to change. Shortly after noon, the first media vans arrived outside the building. Reporters crowded the entrance cameras, ready microphones extended. Patricia had organized a press conference for 1:00 p.m. and the anticipation was building. At 12:45, Marcus changed from his janitor's uniform into the suit he had brought. He looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, the same face but somehow different now. The weight of the past 3 days showed in the lines around his eyes, but there was also something new. Purpose. Determination. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you've won? You haven't? This is just the beginning." Marcus stared at the message. Bradley Harrison, most likely, or one of his allies. A threat wrapped in bravado. He typed back a simple response. "Bring it." At exactly 1:00 p.m., Marcus Thompson walked out the front doors of Apex Technologies and faced a wall of cameras and microphones. Reporters shouted questions over each other, creating a cacophony of noise and chaos. He raised his hand and gradually the crowd quieted. 30 years ago, hun," Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. "I founded Apex Technologies in a garage with nothing but an idea and a dream. I wanted to prove that a black man from Oakland could build something that mattered. I wanted to create a company where talent trumped background, where diversity was a strength, where everyone had a fair chance to succeed." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. 10 years ago, I stepped away from this company because I believed it was strong enough to carry on without me. I was wrong. In my absence, the culture I worked to build was corrupted by leadership that valued profit over people that use power to demean and diminish rather than to lift up and inspire. The cameras flashed and clicked, capturing every word. This morning, I terminated Bradley Harrison, the Chief Financial Officer of Apex Technologies. His employment was ended because of a pattern of discriminatory behavior, harassment, and the creation of a hostile work environment that violated everything this company was supposed to stand for. A reporter shouted a question. "Mr. Thompson, is it true you posed as a janitor to gather evidence against Harrison?" "It's true. For 3 days, I pushed a cleaning cart through these halls invisible to everyone watching and listening. What I saw broke my heart, but it also gave me the clarity I needed to understand exactly what had to change." Another question. How do you respond to accusations that your methods were deceptive and possibly illegal? My methods were completely legal. Every recording was made in common areas subject to company monitoring policy. But more importantly, my methods revealed the truth. They showed what happens in corporate America when powerful people believe they're above accountability. They showed how casual cruelty becomes normalized when no one has the courage to stop it. Marcus looked directly into the cameras. "I want to speak directly to everyone watching this who has experienced what the employees of Apex Technologies experienced. Everyone who has been degraded, humiliated, passed over, or pushed out because of who they are rather than what they can do. I see you, I believe you, and I want you to know that change is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible." A reporter from a major network pushed forward. "Mr. Thompson, what message do you have for Bradley Harrison?" Marcus considered the question carefully before answering. "I don't have a message for Bradley Harrison. I have a message for everyone like him. Every executive who uses their power to demean rather than develop. Every leader who mistakes cruelty for strength. Every person who believes that success requires stepping on others." He paused. "Your time is ending. A new generation is rising, one that demands accountability, transparency, and basic human decency. You can adapt and grow, or you can be left behind. The choice is yours." The press conference continued for another 45 minutes, question after question about the specifics of Harrison's termination, the evidence that had been gathered through the plans for company restructuring. Marcus answered each one calmly and thoroughly, letting the truth speak for itself. By 3:00 p.m., the story had gone viral. Billionaire founder poses as janitor, exposes racist executive, dominated social media. Videos of the press conference accumulated millions of views within hours. Think pieces and opinion columns were already being written about corporate culture, diversity initiatives, and the power of undercover accountability. Through it all, Marcus remained focused on the work ahead. He met with department heads. He reviewed financial projections. He began the process of identifying new leadership to replace the executives who had resigned in the wake of Harrison's termination. At 6:00 p.m., he finally allowed himself a moment of rest. He sat in his old office, the office he hadn't entered in 10 years, and looked out at the city lights coming to life below. His phone rang. Patricia Williams. "You should see the news coverage," she said. "It's everywhere. Every major network, every news site, every social media platform. You're trending globally, Marcus." "How's the market reacting?" "Initial dip about 3%. But analysts are already saying it could recover quickly. Investors like accountability. They like transparency. And frankly, they like the story. Founder returns as janitor exposes corruption, reclaims company. It writes itself." "What about Bradley?" "He's already issued a statement through his lawyers. Claims wrongful termination, denies all allegations, threatens legal action. The usual playbook." "Let him threaten. We have the evidence." "We do, but Marcus, you need to be prepared for what's coming. Bradley Harrison has spent years building connections and accumulating leverage. He's not going to go quietly." "I know." "Do you? Because the next few weeks are going to be brutal. Every piece of your past will be examined. Every decision you've ever made will be questioned. Every relationship you've ever had will be scrutinized." "I know, but," Marcus repeated. "I've been preparing for this for 10 years, Patricia. Even when I wasn't consciously aware of it, some part of me always knew I'd have to come back. Always knew there would be a reckoning." "Then get some rest tonight. Tomorrow the real work begins." Marcus ended the call and continued staring out at the city. Somewhere out there, Bradley Harrison was plotting his revenge. Somewhere out there, allies and enemies were choosing sides. Somewhere out there, millions of people were watching and waiting to see what would happen next. But in this moment, in this office, Marcus Thompson felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope that he could still build something meaningful, that he could still create the company he had always dreamed of, that it wasn't too late to turn his vision into reality. His phone buzzed again, a text from Raymond Jenkins. Mr. Thompson, I just wanted to thank you for what you did today, for showing everyone that things can change. My grandmother was right. Help really does come from unexpected places. Marcus smiled and typed back, "Call me Marcus, and thank your grandmother for me. Her wisdom helped more than she'll ever know." He put down the phone and closed his eyes, allowing himself to feel the full weight of the day. The fear, the anticipation, the confrontation, the revelation. All of it leading to this moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Bradley Harrison wasn't finished. The media circus was just beginning. The hard work of cultural transformation lay ahead. But tonight, Marcus Thompson sat in the office of the company he had built, looking out at the lights of San Francisco, and allowed himself to believe that morning had finally come. The janitor had become the boss again, and everything was about to change. The peace lasted exactly 14 hours. At 8:17 a.m. the following morning, Marcus Thompson's phone exploded with notifications. Patricia Williams called before he could even check the first message. "Turn on the news," she said. "Now." Marcus grabbed the remote and flipped to the financial news channel. His own face stared back at him, but the headline beneath it made his blood run cold. Apex founder accused of fraud. Former CFO releases explosive documents. Bradley Harrison appeared on screen standing before a podium with his lawyers flanking him like bodyguards. His face was composed, almost serene, a stark contrast to the screaming man who had been dragged from the conference room just yesterday. "I have in my possession evidence of systematic financial manipulation dating back over 20 years, Bradley said, his voice steady and confident. Marcus Thompson didn't step away from Apex Technologies 10 years ago by choice. He was quietly removed by the board after irregularities were discovered in the company's early accounting practices. Marcus felt the room spin around him. "This is a lie," he said into the phone. "Patricia, this is a complete fabrication." "I know, but he's got documents, Marcus. I don't know how, but he's got what appear to be financial records with your signature on them." On screen, Bradley continued his performance. Mr. Thompson's charade as a janitor wasn't about exposing corporate misconduct. It was about returning to a company that had expelled him and taking revenge on those who knew the truth about his past. "I never committed fraud," Marcus said, his voice rising. "Every dollar I ever touched was documented and legitimate." "I believe you, but the court of public opinion doesn't know that yet." Patricia's voice was tense. "You need to get to the office immediately. We're about to be in full crisis mode." Marcus was dressed and out the door in 7 minutes. His driver navigated through morning traffic while Marcus watched the news coverage spiral out of control. Every channel had picked up Bradley's accusations. Social media was fracturing into opposing camps, some defending Marcus, others demanding investigation. His phone rang again. James Wright. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know if you've seen the news, but there's something you need to know." "I'm watching it now." "No, not that. Something else." James's voice dropped to a whisper. "I was in the office early this morning, and I saw Bradley's assistant Jennifer leaving with a box of files. She used her old keycard before security could deactivate it. I think she took documents from the accounting archives." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "Are you certain?" "I followed her to the parking garage. She met someone there, a man I didn't recognize. She handed over the box and received an envelope in return." James paused. "Mr. Thompson, I think she was paid to steal company records." "James, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone else about this. Not yet. Can you meet me at the office in 30 minutes? "I'll be there." Marcus ended the call and immediately dialed Patricia. "We have a mole. Bradley's assistant stole documents from our archives this morning. That's where his evidence is coming from." "Stolen documents are inadmissible in court." "Court doesn't matter right now. What matters is that he's controlling the narrative. By the time we prove those documents were stolen, the damage will already be done." "What do you want to do?" Marcus stared out the window at the city rushing past. "I want to know exactly what he took and why. And then I want to destroy his credibility so completely that no one will ever believe another word he says." At 9:03 a.m., Marcus arrived at Apex Technologies to find a crowd of reporters already gathered outside. Security had to create a path for him to enter the building, cameras flashing, questions shouted from every direction. "Mr. Thompson, do you deny the fraud allegations? Will you step down pending investigation? Is it true you were forced out of the company 10 years ago?" Marcus said nothing, his face set in stone, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He pushed through the crowd and into the lobby where Michelle Carter was waiting with the tablet clutched to her chest. "It's bad," she said without preamble. "Our stock dropped 11% in pre-market trading. 3 major institutional investors have requested emergency calls to discuss their positions, and 2 board members have already sent emails asking about emergency succession protocols. Which board members? Davidson and Riley. Both of them were Bradley's closest allies. Of course they were. Marcus strode toward the elevator. Get them both on the phone. I want to speak with them personally. Marcus, I don't think that's wise right now. You should focus on preparing a response to the allegations. Michelle. He stopped and turned to face her. I've spent the last 24 hours being reactive, responding to Bradley's attacks, playing defense. That ends now. I'm not going to let that man control this narrative for another minute. The elevator arrived and Marcus stepped inside. Michelle followed. What's your plan? First, I'm going to find out exactly what documents he stole and what they actually say. Second, I'm going to prove they were obtained illegally. And third, I'm going to expose whatever it is Bradley Harrison is really trying to hide. What do you mean, trying to hide? Marcus turned to look at her. Think about it, Michelle. Bradley's been CFO for 7 years. If there really were financial irregularities in this company's past, he would have found them already. He would have used them against me years ago. The fact that he's only bringing this up now, the day after I fired him, tells me this isn't about old fraud allegations. This is about distraction. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor. Patricia Williams was waiting along with 2 members of her legal team and a man Marcus didn't recognize. Marcus, this is David Chen, our forensic accountant. I've had him on retainer for situations exactly like this. David stepped forward, extending his hand. Mr. Thompson, I've spent the last 3 hours reviewing the documents Mr. Harrison released to the media. I've also pulled our internal records for the corresponding time periods. And the documents are altered. Sophisticated alterations, but alterations nonetheless. The signatures appear genuine, but the dates don't match. Several of the transactions referenced in Harrison's documents never occurred in our actual accounting records. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him immediately, followed by cold fury. He forged evidence, or had someone forge it for him. Either way, these documents won't survive scrutiny. Given time, I can prove definitively that they're fabrications. How much time? 3 days, maybe 4? I don't have 4 days. The market is already reacting. Investors are already panicking. I need something now. David hesitated. There is one thing. One of the documents Harrison released references a bank account in the Cayman Islands supposedly used for the fraudulent transactions. I ran the account number through our databases. And the account doesn't belong to you, Mr. Thompson. It belongs to Harrison. He's had it since 2019. The room went silent. You're telling me, Marcus said slowly, that Bradley Harrison accidentally included evidence of his own offshore account in documents meant to frame me for fraud. It appears so. He must not have realized the account number was visible in the background of one of the scanned documents. It's small, but it's there. Patricia was already on her phone. I'm contacting the FBI Financial Crimes Division. If Harrison has an undisclosed offshore account, there may be tax evasion implications. Wait, Marcus held up his hand. Not yet. Marcus, this could end his attack immediately. Or it could make him desperate, and desperate men do desperate things. Marcus began pacing, his mind racing. Right now, Bradley thinks he has the upper hand. He thinks I'm scrambling to respond to his accusations. If we reveal what we know too soon, he'll have time to cover his tracks, move the money, destroy evidence. So what do you suggest? I suggest we let him think he's winning, for now. We respond to his accusations with careful denials, nothing that looks like a counterattack. Meanwhile, we dig deeper. If Bradley has one offshore account, he might have others. If he forged these documents, he might have forged others. I want to know everything there is to know about Bradley Harrison's finances before we make our move. Patricia nodded slowly. That's risky. Every hour we delay, the damage to your reputation grows. My reputation will recover. The truth always comes out eventually. But if we play this wrong, Bradley walks away with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. Marcus's eyes hardened. I want him destroyed, Patricia. Not embarrassed. Not inconvenienced. Destroyed. The way he destroyed the careers of everyone who ever stood in his way. At 10:34 a.m., Marcus convened an emergency meeting of department heads in the main conference room. The same room where just 24 hours earlier he had revealed his identity and terminated Bradley Harrison. The atmosphere was tense. Worried faces lined both sides of the table. Catherine Reynolds sat at the far end looking like she hadn't slept. I know you've all seen the news this morning, Marcus began. I know you have questions and concerns. Let me address them directly. He leaned forward, making eye contact with each person in turn. The allegations Bradley Harrison made are false, completely and entirely false. We have already identified evidence that the documents he released were forged, and we are in the process of building a case that will not only exonerate me, but expose Harrison's own financial crimes. Murmurs rippled through the room. However, Marcus continued, I also know that truth doesn't always win in the court of public opinion. I know that our stock price is dropping. I know that investors are worried. And I know that some of you are probably wondering if you made the right choice standing with me yesterday. He paused, letting the silence build. So let me tell you what's going to happen. Over the next 72 hours, this company is going to weather a storm. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be painful. Some of you may be approached by reporters looking for quotes. Some of you may be contacted by Bradley Harrison's allies looking for information. Some of you may be tempted to distance yourselves from me and this company to protect your own careers. His voice hardened. If that's the choice you make, I won't stop you, but I will remember, and when the truth comes out, when Bradley Harrison is exposed for the fraud and criminal he truly is, I will remember who stood with me and who ran. The room was absolutely silent. Now, I'm going to go around this table, and I want each of you to tell me honestly whether you're in or out. No judgment, no recriminations, just truth. He turned to Catherine Reynolds first. I'm in, she said immediately. I stood by while Harrison corrupted this company. I won't make that mistake again. One by one, the department heads declared their loyalty. Marketing, operations, legal, human resources, research and development. Each voice added to the chorus of commitment. When they reached the end of the table, Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you, all of you. Now let's get to work. At 11:47 a.m., James Wright knocked on Marcus's office door. Come in? James entered, looking nervous but determined. Mr. Thompson, I have more information about what I saw this morning. After Jennifer left the parking garage, I went back to the accounting archives to see what might be missing. And 3 boxes of records from 2003 to 2007. That's the period when you stepped back from daily operations. The files covered the company's first major acquisition and the subsequent restructuring. Marcus frowned. Why would Bradley want records from that acquisition? It was completed successfully, no irregularities. That's what I thought, but then I started digging deeper. James pulled out his tablet. Mr. Thompson, do you remember who handled the legal work for that acquisition? Of course, Williams and Associates. Patricia's firm. Right, but do you know who the junior associate was on that deal, the one who actually prepared most of the documents? Marcus shook his head. Bradley Harrison. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. That's impossible. Bradley was never a lawyer. He came from Goldman Sachs. His official resume says Goldman Sachs, but I pulled the original employment records from our archives before he could get to them. James turned the tablet to show Marcus. Bradley Harrison worked at Williams and Associates from 2002 to 2005. He left to pursue his MBA at Harvard, then joined Goldman Sachs after graduation. Marcus stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process the implications. Patricia never mentioned this. Maybe she doesn't remember. It was over 20 years ago, and Harrison was a junior associate. He probably handled paperwork, not major decisions. But if he worked on that acquisition, he would have had access to all the financial details, all the internal documents. Marcus's eyes widened. He would have known exactly which records to target, exactly which documents to alter to make them look incriminating. That's what I was thinking. James, you need to tell me everything. Every detail you remember from this morning. Every document you can identify that might be missing. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. And James, thank you for paying attention, for following your instincts. That kind of initiative is exactly what this company needs. James stood a little straighter. Mr. Thompson, can I tell you something? Of course. Yesterday, when Harrison made me kneel on that floor, I thought my career was over. I thought I'd made the worst mistake of my life coming to this company. But then I watched you stand up to him. I watched you take back what was yours. And I realized that the mistake wasn't coming here. The mistake was accepting that men like Harrison are inevitable. James's voice strengthened. They're not. They can be beaten. You proved that. We proved it together, all of us, and we're not done yet. At 1:23 p.m., Marcus received a call from an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered, Mr. Thompson, I was wondering when we'd speak directly. Bradley Harrison's voice was calm, almost friendly, as if they were old colleagues catching up over drinks. I have nothing to say to you, Harrison. That's unfortunate, because I have quite a lot to say to you. Bradley chuckled softly. I have to admit I underestimated you. The janitor routine was clever. I never would have expected the great Marcus Thompson to push a cleaning cart through his own building. Is there a point to this call? There is. I wanted to offer you an opportunity, a chance to end this before it goes any further. I'm listening. Walk away, announce your retirement. Cite health reasons, personal matters, whatever you want. Transfer your shares to a blind trust and disappear back into the comfortable obscurity you enjoyed for the past 10 years. Marcus laughed a sharp sound without any humor. You're delusional. I own 67% of this company. I have evidence that you forged documents. I know about your offshore accounts. And you think I'm going to walk away? Silence on the other end. Then very quietly, what do you know about my accounts? Enough, and I'm learning more every hour. Bradley's composure finally cracked. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Thompson. No idea who you're threatening. I have friends in places you can't imagine. Resources you can't comprehend. If you continue down this path, I will destroy you. Not just your reputation, not just your company, you. Is that a threat? It's a promise. The fraud allegations are just the beginning. I have information about your family, your friends, everyone you've ever cared about. Back off now, or I will burn your entire world to ashes. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice, but his voice remained steady. My family is off limits, Harrison. If you touch anyone I care about, you'll fire me again. Bradley laughed. Face it, Thompson. You're out of your depth. You spent 10 years running away from the real world, and now you think you can just waltz back in and play hero. This isn't a movie. The good guy doesn't always win. Maybe not, but the truth always comes out. The truth is whatever I say it is. The truth is whatever the media reports. The truth is whatever people believe. Bradley's voice dropped to a whisper. And right now, people believe you're a fraud. They believe you were pushed out of your own company 20 years ago. They believe I'm the victim of your revenge scheme. They won't believe it for long. They won't need to. By the time the real truth comes out, I'll be long gone. New name, new country, new life. And you'll be left here trying to rebuild a company that no one trusts anymore. Bradley paused. Last chance, Thompson. Walk away, or lose everything. Marcus took a deep breath. Harrison, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen very carefully. 30 years ago, I started this company with nothing. No money, no connections, no advantages. Just an idea and the stubborn refusal to accept the limitations others tried to place on me. I've been underestimated my entire life. I've been dismissed, overlooked, and counted out more times than I can remember. And every single time, I've proven the doubters wrong. His voice hardened. You think you can threaten me, you think you can scare me into walking away from everything I've built. You're wrong. I've faced real adversity, Harrison. Real discrimination. Real obstacles. You're nothing compared to what I've already overcome. So here's my counteroffer. Confess. Confess to the forged documents, the offshore accounts, everything. Do it now publicly, and I'll recommend leniency when the federal prosecutors come calling. Bradley laughed again, but this time there was an edge of uncertainty in it. You're bluffing. Try me. Fine, you want war, you've got it. Don't say I didn't give you a chance. The line went dead. Marcus set down his phone and stared at it for a long moment. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the knowledge that Bradley Harrison had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He hit the intercom button. Patricia, I need you in here immediately, and bring the forensic accountant. At 3:15 p.m., the second bomb dropped. Michelle Carter burst into Marcus's office without knocking. Turn on Channel 7, now. Marcus grabbed the remote. The screen flickered to life, showing a press conference in progress. A woman stood at a podium, her face tear-streaked but her voice steady. My name is Angela Morrison. 22 years ago, I was a secretary at Apex Technologies, and I was sexually harassed by Marcus Thompson. The room went cold. This is a lie, Marcus said immediately. I don't even recognize this woman. She says she worked here from 2001 to 2003, Michelle said. I'm pulling her personnel records now. On screen, Angela Morrison continued her accusations. Mr. Thompson made inappropriate comments about my appearance. He touched me without consent. When I complained to Human Resources, I was told to keep quiet if I valued my job. 2 months later, I was terminated without cause. This never happened, Falcon, Marcus insisted. I never harassed anyone. I barely interacted with administrative staff during those years. I was focused entirely on product development and investor relations. I believe you, Michelle said, but Bradley is clearly behind this. He's throwing everything he has at you. Can we prove she's lying? If she was actually employed here during that time period, there will be records, performance reviews, termination documents. If her story doesn't match the paper trail, we can discredit her. And if Bradley fabricated records for her too, Michelle's face fell. Then we have a bigger problem. At 4:42 p.m., Patricia Williams called with more bad news. The woman, Angela Morrison, she's being represented by Harrison's personal attorney. They filed a civil lawsuit against you 30 minutes ago. Sexual harassment, wrongful termination, intentional infliction of emotional distress. They're asking for $20 million in damages. This is coordinated, Marcus said. The fraud allegations this morning, the harassment lawsuit this afternoon. He's trying to bury me in accusations. That's exactly what he's doing, and it's working. I've received calls from 6 major media outlets asking for comment. 3 institutional investors have formally requested an emergency board meeting, and 2 more board members are now questioning whether you should step aside pending investigation. Step aside? I'm the majority shareholder. I can't step aside. You can recuse yourself from operational decisions. They're arguing that your continued involvement is damaging the company's reputation and stock price. Marcus closed his eyes, fighting the urge to put his fist through the wall. What do you recommend Honestly, I recommend you consider it. What? Not permanently, just temporarily. Announce that you're stepping back from daily operations while the allegations are investigated. Appoint Catherine Reynolds as acting CEO. Show the market and the investors that you're taking the accusations seriously. That's exactly what Bradley wants. He wants me out of the way so he can continue manipulating things from behind the scenes. I know, but right now, you're losing the narrative war. Every hour you spend defending yourself is an hour you're not spending on offense. If you step back even temporarily, you can focus entirely on building the case against Harrison. You can work in the shadows while he thinks he's winning. Marcus was silent for a long moment. You want me to become invisible again? I want you to be strategic. The janitor routine worked because no one expected it, because you were underestimated. Right now, everyone is watching every move you make. You can't sneeze without it becoming a headline. And if I step back, then the spotlight shifts. The media will move on to the next story. Bradley will think he's won. And when you finally make your move, it will be devastating. Marcus turned to look out the window at the city below. Everything he had fought for, everything he had reclaimed, now slipping through his fingers. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Long enough to complete the forensic analysis. Long enough to build an airtight case. And in those 2 weeks, Bradley continues to destroy my reputation. Your reputation will recover. The truth always comes out. Marcus laughed bitterly. That's what I said to him. Because it's true. Marcus, I've known you for 20 years. I've watched you build this company from nothing. I've watched you face obstacles that would have crushed anyone else. You're the strongest person I know, but strength isn't always about standing firm. Sometimes it's about knowing when to bend so you don't break. At 6:00 p.m., Marcus called an emergency board meeting. The faces around the table were grim, worried, some openly hostile. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I've asked you here to announce a decision. Effective immediately, I am stepping back from daily operational responsibilities at Apex Technologies. Catherine Reynolds will serve as acting CEO until these allegations are resolved. Murmurs rippled through the room. Davidson, one of Bradley's allies, couldn't hide his smirk. However, Marcus continued, let me be absolutely clear. I am not stepping down. I am not resigning. I am not selling my shares. I remain the majority shareholder of this company, and I will be intimately involved in the investigation into Bradley Harrison's conduct. Any board member who interprets this announcement as weakness or surrender does so at their own peril. He looked directly at Davidson. There will be a reckoning, ladies and gentlemen. The truth about what Bradley Harrison has done, the fraud, the forgery, the manipulation will come out. And when it does, I will remember exactly who stood where during this crisis. Davidson's smirk faded. Catherine, you have the floor. Catherine stood, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I want to assure everyone here that my first priority is stabilizing our operations and restoring investor confidence. I will be reaching out to our major institutional shareholders tomorrow morning to provide reassurance and transparency. I will also be cooperating fully with any investigation into the allegations against Mr. Thompson or against Mr. Harrison. She looked around the table. This company was built on principles that we have lost sight of in recent years. Integrity, accountability, respect. It's time we remembered those principles. It's time we became the company we were always supposed to be. At 8:30 p.m., Marcus returned to the rented house that had served as his base of operations for the past week. The janitor's uniform still hung in the closet. The documents still covered the coffee table. But everything felt different now. His phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Mr. Thompson, my name is Angela Morrison. I think we need to talk." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "You filed a lawsuit against me today." "I know, and I need you to understand something. Everything I said at that press conference was a lie." The world seemed to stop spinning. "What?" "I never worked for Apex Technologies. I've never even been inside the building. Bradley Harrison paid me $50,000 to read a script and file a lawsuit. He said it was just leverage. He said it wouldn't go to trial." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I just saw the news. The real news, not the version Harrison has been feeding me." Angela's voice cracked. "I saw the video of you as a janitor. I saw what you were trying to do, expose the corruption, help the employees who were being mistreated. And I realized that I'm not just lying for money. I'm helping a monster destroy a good man." Marcus sat down heavily. "Ms. Morrison, I need you to listen carefully. What you just told me could change everything, but only if you're willing to say it publicly." "I know, I'm scared. Harrison threatened me. He said if I backed out, he would make sure no one believed anything I ever said again." "I can protect you. My lawyers can protect you, but you have to be willing to tell the truth." A long silence. Then, "When do you need me?" "Tomorrow. Can you come to my lawyer's office tomorrow morning? I'll be there." Marcus ended the call and sat in the darkness, his heart pounding. One phone call, one moment of conscience from a stranger, and suddenly the game had changed completely. He called Patricia immediately. "We've got her." "Got who?" "Angela Morrison, the harassment accuser. She just called me. The whole thing is fake. Bradley paid her to lie." Patricia was silent for 3 full seconds. "Can she prove it?" "She's coming to your office tomorrow morning. Get everything ready, recordings, documents, whatever she has. And Patricia, contact the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. It's time to end this." "Marcus, are you sure once we involve the feds, there's no going back?" "I'm sure. Bradley Harrison threatened my family. He tried to destroy my reputation with forged documents and paid accusers. He's had this coming for a long time." "Then I'll make the calls tonight. Be ready for anything tomorrow." Marcus hung up and looked around the quiet house. Outside, the city lights glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Bradley Harrison was probably celebrating, thinking he had won. He had no idea what was coming. The janitor had one more surprise left. Angela Morrison arrived at Patricia Williams's law office at exactly 7:48 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hands trembled as she clutched a manila envelope to her chest, and her eyes darted nervously toward the door every few seconds, as if expecting Bradley Harrison to burst through at any moment. Marcus studied her from across the conference table. She was younger than he expected, mid-30s, with the kind of tired beauty that spoke of hardship and difficult choices. Whatever Bradley had promised her, whatever desperation had driven her to accept his money, it was written plainly on her face. "Thank you for coming," Marcus said quietly. "I know this isn't easy." "Easy," Angela laughed bitterly. "Mr. Thompson, I haven't slept more than 2 hours since that press conference. Every time I close my eyes, I see your face on the news. I see people calling you a predator, a fraud, a criminal, and I know it's my fault." "It's Bradley Harrison's fault. You were a tool he used. That doesn't make it better. I still made the choice." Angela set the envelope on the table with shaking hands. "Everything is in here. The contract Harrison had me sign, the wire transfer records showing the $50,000, text messages where he coached me on what to say, and recordings." Patricia leaned forward. "Recordings of what? Of Harrison. He called me every night for a week before the press conference, making sure I had the story straight. I recorded every conversation on my phone." Angela's voice cracked. "I don't know why I did it. Maybe some part of me knew this was wrong and wanted insurance. Maybe I just wanted proof that I wasn't completely losing my mind." Marcus exchanged a look with Patricia. This was more than they had hoped for. This was a complete dismantling of Bradley's entire narrative. "Angela," Marcus said gently, "I need to ask you something difficult. Why did you agree to do this in the first place?" She was silent for a long moment, staring at her hands. "I have a son, Tyler. He's 7 years old, and he has leukemia. The treatments cost more than I could ever afford, even with insurance. I was drowning in medical bills, about to lose my house, and then Bradley Harrison appeared like an answer to a prayer." Her voice hardened. "He knew exactly how vulnerable I was. He targeted me specifically because of Tyler's illness. He He said $50,000 would cover the next round of treatment and save my house. How did he know about your son? I don't know, but he knew everything. My financial situation, my work history, my desperation. He said all I had to do was read a script and sign some papers and Tyler would get the care he needed. Patricia pulled out her tablet. Angela, what you're describing sounds like coercion. Harrison exploited your circumstances to commit fraud. That's a crime and you're as much a victim as Mr. Thompson. I'm not a victim. I made a choice. You made a choice under duress with your child's life hanging in the balance. No court would hold you fully responsible under those circumstances. Patricia slid a document across the table. This is an agreement granting you immunity in exchange for your testimony against Bradley Harrison. You won't face any criminal charges. You won't be sued for damages. All we ask is that you tell the truth. Angela stared at the document like it might bite her. What about Tyler? What about his treatment? Marcus spoke before Patricia could. Your son will get every treatment he needs. I'll personally guarantee it. Apex Technologies has a charitable foundation for employees and their families facing medical hardships. I'm extending that coverage to you. But I'm not an employee. I never was. Then consider yourself a contractor. Marcus reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. Angela, you made a mistake. A desperate mistake born from a mother's love for her son. I understand that. I don't blame you for it. But now you have a chance to make it right, to expose the man who exploited your pain for his own gain. Will you take that chance? Tears streamed down Angela's face as she picked up the pen. At 9:15 a.m., Patricia Williams called a press conference outside her law office. The media, already hungry for the next chapter in the Apex Technologies saga, assembled in force. Cameras clicked and microphones jockeyed for position as Angela Morrison stepped up to the podium. My name is Angela Morrison, she began, her voice shaky but determined. 2 days ago, I stood before cameras like these and accused Marcus Thompson of sexual harassment. I told you I was a former Apex employee who had been victimized and silenced. Every word of that statement was a lie. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. I have never worked for Apex Technologies. I have never met Marcus Thompson before today. I was paid $50,000 by Bradley Harrison to fabricate accusations against an innocent man. Angela held up the manila envelope. I have documentation proving everything I'm telling you. Wire transfers, contracts, recorded phone conversations. Bradley Harrison orchestrated this entire fraud to destroy a man whose only crime was exposing corporate misconduct. And the questions exploded from every direction. Why did you agree to lie? Were you threatened? How did Harrison contact you? Angela answered each question with painful honesty. She spoke about Tyler, about the medical bills, about the desperation that had clouded her judgment. She spoke about Bradley's manipulation, his careful exploitation of her vulnerability. And she spoke about the moment she realized she couldn't live with what she had done. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Angela concluded. What I did was wrong, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But I refuse to let Bradley Harrison use me as a weapon to destroy a good man. The truth matters. It has to matter. Marcus watched the press conference from inside Patricia's office, his emotions cycling between relief and cold fury. Bradley had used a mother's desperation to weaponize false accusations. He had exploited her dying child to perpetuate a fraud. There were no depths to which that man wouldn't sink. His phone buzzed, a text from Michelle Carter at Apex headquarters. Stock is recovering, up 6% since the press conference started. Investors are responding to Angela's confession. A small victory, but the war was far from over. At 11:32 a.m., Bradley Harrison emerged from his mansion to face a wall of reporters who had been camped outside since Angela's press conference. His face was composed, but Marcus, watching on television, could see the cracks forming beneath the surface. The accusations made this morning are entirely fabricated, Bradley declared. Angela Morrison is a disturbed woman with a history of mental instability. Any documents or recordings she claims to possess are either forged or taken completely out of context. Mr. Harrison, how do you explain the wire transfer of $50,000 to her account? I have no knowledge of any wire transfer. If such a transfer exists, it was made by someone attempting to frame me, likely Marcus Thompson himself, who has already demonstrated a willingness to engage in deception and manipulation. Will you submit to an FBI investigation? Bradley's composure flickered for just a moment. I have nothing to hide. I welcome any investigation that will ultimately prove my innocence and expose Marcus Thompson's systematic campaign to destroy my reputation. He turned and retreated back into his mansion without taking further questions. Marcus muted the television and turned to Patricia. He's scared. You can see it in his eyes. Scared men are dangerous men, Patricia replied. We need to move fast before he can destroy evidence or flee the country. What about the FBI? They're executing a warrant on his home as we speak. Marcus's eyebrows rose. That was fast. The offshore accounts made it fast. Tax evasion is a federal crime, and once they started digging, they found a lot more than just one hidden account. Bradley Harrison has been moving money through shell companies for years, millions of dollars that never appeared on any tax return. Does he know the FBI is coming? He's about to find out. At 12:17 p.m., a convoy of black SUVs pulled up outside Bradley Harrison's mansion. Marcus watched the live coverage on multiple screens in Patricia's office, his heart pounding with anticipation. FBI agents in tactical gear surrounded the property. The lead agent approached the front door and knocked firmly. The world held its breath. The door opened and Bradley Harrison appeared, his face a mask of indignation. What is the meaning of this to Bradley Harrison? We have a federal warrant to search these premises in connection with ongoing investigations into tax evasion, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. You have the right to remain silent. This is outrageous. I demand to speak with my attorney. You can call your attorney from the field office. Please step outside with your hands visible. Bradley's composure shattered completely. Do you know who I am? Do you know the people I know? I will have your badges for this. Sir, please cooperate or we will be forced to take you into custody. For a long moment, Bradley stood frozen in the doorway, his face cycling through rage, fear, and desperate calculation. Then slowly he raised his hands and stepped outside. The cameras captured everything. The handcuffs clicking around Bradley Harrison's wrists. The agents leading him to a waiting vehicle. The procession of FBI personnel streaming into his mansion with boxes and evidence bags. Marcus watched in silence as the man who had humiliated him, degraded him, and tried to destroy him was driven away in the back of a federal vehicle. It's not over, Patricia warned. He'll make bail within hours. He has resources. It's the Connections lawyers. This is just the beginning of a very long legal process. I know, but for right now, just for this moment, I want to appreciate what's happening. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. 3 days ago, that man grabbed me by the collar and told me I was less than nothing. He made me kneel on the floor in front of his colleagues. He laughed while I cleaned up coffee he deliberately spilled. He turned to face Patricia. Now he's the one in handcuffs. He's the one being humiliated in front of the whole world. He's the one who's going to kneel before a judge and answer for everything he's done. Marcus's eyes glistened. Tell me that's not justice. It's justice, Patricia said softly. It's exactly what justice looks like. At 2:45 p.m., Marcus returned to Apex Technologies' headquarters for the first time since stepping back from operations. The lobby was crowded with employees who had gathered spontaneously upon hearing the news of Bradley's arrest. When Marcus walked through the front doors, the crowd fell silent. Then someone started clapping. The applause spread like wildfire, building from a scattered few to a thunderous ovation that echoed off the marble walls. Employees who had suffered under Bradley's regime, who had been humiliated and marginalized and forced to choose between their dignity and their careers, now stood united in celebration. Raymond Jenkins was at the security desk, tears streaming down his face as he clapped harder than anyone. Marcus walked through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting embraces, meeting the eyes of people who had been afraid for so long and were finally allowing themselves to hope. James Wright pushed through the crowd to reach him. Mr. Thompson, I just wanted to say thank you for everything, for not giving up. Thank you, James, for paying attention when it mattered, for following your instincts. This wouldn't have happened without you. It wouldn't have happened without you. You could have stayed away. You could have kept living your quiet life, but you came back. You fought. Some things are worth fighting for. Michelle Carter appeared at his side. Marcus Catherine is waiting for you in the conference room. There's something you need to see. The celebration faded behind him as Marcus followed Michelle to the elevator. Something in her expression told him this wasn't going to be good news. In the conference room, Catherine Reynolds stood before a screen displaying a complex web of financial transactions. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly. Marcus, we found something during the investigation into Bradley's finances. Something I don't think anyone was expecting. What is it? The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the hidden money? Catherine took a deep breath. It wasn't just tax evasion. Bradley was embezzling from Apex Technologies for years. The total amount we've identified so far is $47 million. Marcus felt the floor shift beneath his feet. $47 million. And we're still counting. The forensic accountants think the final number could be closer to $60 million. How is that possible? How did no one notice? Because Bradley was the CFO. He controlled the financial reporting. He buried the transactions in legitimate business expenses, inflated contracts with fake vendors, created entire subsidiary companies that existed only on paper. Catherine's voice shook with barely controlled fury. He was stealing from this company the entire time he was humiliating employees and destroying careers. Every time he lectured someone about cost-cutting or efficiency, he was pocketing millions for himself. Marcus sank into a chair, struggling to process the magnitude of what he was hearing. The discrimination, the harassment, the toxic culture, all of that had been devastating enough. But this was something else entirely. This was betrayal on a scale he had never imagined. Does the FBI know? They know now. This changes the charges against him significantly. Tax evasion is one thing. Embezzling $60 million from a publicly traded company is another. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. If he's convicted, yes, he'll never see the outside of a cell again. Marcus closed his eyes, thinking about all the times Bradley had lectured him about fiscal responsibility. All the times Bradley had cut programs and fired employees in the name of shareholder value. All the times Bradley had used financial necessity as an excuse to destroy the company's culture. And all along he had been stealing. Stealing from the company Marcus had built. Stealing from the employees he had degraded. Stealing from shareholders who trusted him with their investments. Catherine? Marcus said quietly, I want a full accounting, every dollar he took, where it came from, who was affected, and I want a plan to make restitution. Employees whose raises were denied, programs that were cut, initiatives that were canceled, all of it. We're going to make this right. That could cost tens of millions of dollars. I don't care. Bradley Harrison stole from this company and blamed the consequences on innocent people. We owe it to them to undo as much of the damage as possible. At 4:30 p.m., Bradley Harrison was released on $5 million bail. He emerged from federal custody looking diminished. His expensive suit wrinkled his hair, disheveled his face, bearing the hollow look of a man whose world had collapsed around him. Marcus watched the coverage from his old office, now fully reclaimed as his own. Bradley refused to speak to reporters pushing through the crowd to a waiting car that sped away toward an uncertain future. His phone rang. Patricia Williams. He's out. I saw. Marcus, there's something else. Something the FBI found during the search of his home. Patricia paused. They found files on you, personal files, surveillance photos, private investigator reports, detailed timelines of your movements going back months. He was watching me. Before you even came back to the company, he was tracking you, documenting your routine gathering information. The FBI thinks he may have known about the anonymous letter before you ever received it. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying? I'm saying that Bradley Harrison may have orchestrated this entire situation from the beginning. The letter that brought you back, the janitor opportunity, all of it designed to lure you into a trap. But why, if he knew I was coming, why let me see everything? Why not just stop me? Maybe he wanted you to come back. Maybe he thought he could defeat you publicly, destroy your reputation, and emerge as the hero who saved the company from its disgraced founder. Patricia's voice hardened. Or maybe he had another plan entirely. One we still don't understand. Marcus stared out the window at the city lights beginning to flicker on in the gathering dusk. If Bradley had truly planned all of this, if the entire chain of events had been orchestrated, then what else might be waiting? What other traps might still be hidden? Patricia, I need to see those files, everything the FBI recovered. I'm working on getting access, but Marcus, be careful. Bradley is desperate now, and desperate men are unpredictable. He's lost everything, his job, his reputation, his freedom is hanging by a thread. There's no telling what he might do. I understand. Do you? Because I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never seen someone as dangerous as Bradley Harrison. He doesn't just want to win. He wants to annihilate anyone who challenges him. And right now, you're at the top of that list. At 6:15 p.m., Marcus received a visitor he wasn't expecting. Jennifer Collins, Bradley Harrison's former assistant, appeared in his doorway, looking terrified and resolute in equal measure. She was the one who had stolen documents from the archives, the one who had helped Bradley construct his web of lies. And now she was standing in Marcus's office, clutching her purse like a shield. I know you don't have any reason to trust me, Jennifer said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know what I did. I helped him. I was part of it. Yes, you were. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here because there's something you need to know, something the FBI doesn't have yet. Marcus gestured to the chair across from his desk. I'm listening. Jennifer sat down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Bradley didn't just steal money from the company. He was building something, a network. Other executives at other companies, arrogants who think like him, who operate like him. They share information, cover for each other, protect each other from accountability. A network. They call themselves the Founders Circle, ironic right men who've never founded anything claiming the title of founders. Jennifer's voice dripped with contempt. I've seen the communications, the meetings. Bradley was one of the senior members. When he started attacking you, he wasn't acting alone. The others helped him providing resources, legal strategies, media contacts. They saw your return as a threat to all of them. Marcus leaned forward, his mind racing. How many others are we talking about? At least 15 that I know of. CFOs, COOs, CEOs at major tech companies. All of them engaged in the same kinds of practices. Bradley was discrimination, harassment, financial manipulation. They protect each other because exposing one threatens all of them. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired. Tired of being scared. Tired of being complicit. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I have a daughter. She's 12 years old, and she wants to be a software engineer when she grows up. What kind of industry am I leaving for her if I stay silent? What kind of mother would I be? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Jennifer, what you're describing is a criminal conspiracy. If what you're saying is true, these men could all face federal charges. I know, and I'm willing to testify about everything. You understand what that means. These are powerful people. They'll come after you. They'll come after me anyway. Bradley knows I have information that could hurt him. The only question is whether I use that information to protect myself or let him bury me with his other secrets. Jennifer straightened in her chair. I've made my choice. I'm not going to be afraid anymore. Marcus stood and extended his hand. Then welcome to the right side of history. At 8:00 p.m., Marcus convened an emergency meeting with Patricia Michelle Carter and Catherine Reynolds. He shared what Jennifer had told him about the Founders Circle, watching their expressions shift from disbelief to horror to grim determination. If this is true, Patricia said slowly, we're not just taking down Bradley Harrison. We're potentially exposing systemic corruption across the entire tech industry. That's exactly what we're doing. Marcus, you understand the implications. These people will fight back with everything they have. We're talking about billions of dollars in combined resources, armies of lawyers, political connections that go to the highest levels. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't just about clearing your name anymore. This is about challenging a power structure that's been in place for decades. People have tried before. They've been destroyed. Marcus looked around the table at the three women who had risked everything to stand with him. Patricia, who had been his lawyer and friend for 20 years. Michelle, who had documented injustice for years while waiting for someone with the power to act. Catherine, who had chosen redemption over self-preservation. I spent 10 years hiding, Marcus said quietly. 10 years pretending that if I just stayed out of sight, things would work themselves out, that good people would rise and bad people would fall. I was wrong. The Bradley Harrisons of the world don't fall by themselves. They have to be pushed. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city that had been his home for 60 years. My grandmother came to California in 1952. She was a maid. She cleaned houses for white families, who wouldn't let her use the front door. She saved every penny she earned so that my mother could go to college. And my mother worked 2 jobs so that I could have opportunities she never had. His voice thickened with emotion. Everything I've accomplished, everything I've built, stands on the shoulders of women who were told they couldn't do better, be better, dream bigger. Women who refused to accept the limitations others tried to place on them. He turned back to face the room. I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm not going to be satisfied with one victory while the system that produced Bradley Harrison continues to operate. If there's a network of men who think they can treat people like dirt and get away with it, then I'm going to expose every single one of them, whatever it takes, however long it takes. Patricia nodded slowly. Then we need to be strategic. Jennifer's testimony is valuable, but it's not enough by itself. We need documentation. We need other witnesses. We need to build an airtight case before we go public. How long? Months? Maybe a year? This isn't something that can be rushed. Then we start tonight. At 10:47 p.m., Marcus received a phone call that would change everything yet again. Mr. Thompson, this is Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I apologize for the late hour, but we have a situation. What kind of situation? Bradley Harrison has disappeared. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. What do you mean, disappeared? He was being monitored as a condition of his bail. Approximately 2 hours ago, his tracking device went offline. When agents arrived at his residence to investigate, they found the device had been removed and Harrison was gone. We believe he's attempting to flee the country. How is that possible? He's facing federal charges. He had help. We're still piecing together the details, but it appears someone provided him with documentation and transportation. He may already be out of the country. Marcus's mind flashed to Jennifer's revelation about the Founders Circle, the network of powerful men who protected each other. Of course, they would help Bradley escape. Of course, they would close ranks around one of their own. Agent Chen, I have information that may be relevant to your investigation. I believe Bradley Harrison is part of a larger criminal conspiracy involving executives at multiple tech companies. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, Mr. Thompson, I think we need to meet in person, tonight. At midnight, Marcus sat across from Special Agent Chen in a secure FBI field office laying out everything he had learned about the Founders Circle. Jennifer Collins was there, too nervous but resolute, providing names, dates, details that corroborated the existence of the network. Agent Chen listened intently, taking notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Marcus finished, she set down her pen and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Mr. Thompson, what you're describing, Hartquaming, is one of the largest white-collar criminal conspiracies we've ever encountered. If it's true, and I'm not saying it isn't, the investigation will take years and involve agencies across multiple jurisdictions. I understand. Do you also understand that you're putting yourself in significant danger? These men have resources and reach that most people can't imagine. If they believe you're threatening their freedom, they'll do whatever it takes to stop you. They've already tried. Bradley Harrison attacked me with forged documents, paid accusers, and media manipulation. I'm still standing. Bradley Harrison was one man acting partly alone. What you're describing is a coordinated network. Their response will be coordinated as well. Marcus thought about his grandmother cleaning houses so her daughter could go to college. He thought about his mother working 2 jobs so he could chase impossible dreams. He thought about every person who had ever been told they weren't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. Agent Chen, I've spent my entire life being told what I can't do, what I shouldn't try, what's too dangerous, too difficult, too ambitious for someone like me, and every single time I've proven the doubters wrong. He leaned forward. I'm not going to stop now, not when so much is at stake, not when so many people are counting on someone to finally stand up and say enough is enough. Agent Chen studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. Mr. Thompson, I think we're going to work very well together. At 2:30 a.m., Marcus finally returned to his rented house, exhausted but energized. The past 72 hours had been a whirlwind of revelations, confrontations, and decisions that would shape the rest of his life. He sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out the photograph he had kept in his wallet for 50 years. A faded black and white image of his grandmother standing proud in her maid's uniform, her chin lifted, her eyes defiant. I hope you're proud of me, he whispered. I hope I'm making you proud. The house was quiet. Outside, the city slept unaware of the storm that was gathering. Somewhere out there, Bradley Harrison was running, the Founders Circle was regrouping, and powerful men were plotting their next move. But Marcus Thompson wasn't afraid. He had been a janitor pushing a cart through hallways where no one saw him. He had been a founder reclaiming the company stolen from his vision. He had been a warrior exposing corruption that others had tolerated for too long. And now he was something else entirely. Something that Bradley Harrison and all his allies had never anticipated. He was the man who would not stop until justice was complete. The phone on the table buzzed, a text message from a number he didn't recognize. This isn't over, Thompson. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. We are everywhere. We see everything, and we will destroy you. Marcus read the message once, then set the phone down. Bring it, he said to the empty room. I'll be waiting. 3 weeks had passed since Bradley Harrison vanished into the night, and Marcus Thompson had not slept more than 4 hours at a stretch. Every morning brought new revelations. Every evening brought new threats. The Founders Circle had declared war, and the battlefield stretched across boardrooms, courtrooms, and the court of public opinion. At 6:15 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Special Agent Sarah Chen called with the news Marcus had been waiting for. We found him. Marcus sat up in bed, instantly alert. Where? Singapore. He's been hiding in a luxury apartment owned by one of the Founders Circle members. Local authorities are coordinating with us on extradition. How long until he's back on American soil? 72 hours. Maybe less if he doesn't fight the extradition. He'll fight it. He'll fight everything. Probably. But it doesn't matter. We have him, Mr. Thompson. Bradley Harrison is coming home to face justice. Marcus ended the call and sat in silence for a long moment, letting the reality sink in. 3 weeks of hunting. 3 weeks of building cases against not just Bradley, but against the network that had protected him. And now the end was finally in sight. His phone buzzed again. A text from James Wright. "Turn on the news, Channel 4, now." Marcus grabbed the remote and turned on the television. His breath caught in his throat. The headline read, "Founders Circle Scandal Major Tech Executives Arrested in Dawn Raids." The screen showed footage of FBI agents escorting handcuffed men from mansions across the country. 12 arrests. 12 of the most powerful executives in Silicon Valley, all taken into custody simultaneously in a coordinated operation that had been planned for weeks in absolute secrecy. Marcus watched as faces he recognized flashed across the screen. Men who had sat in boardrooms, made decisions affecting millions of lives, and believed themselves untouchable. Men who had protected Bradley Harrison and conspired to destroy anyone who threatened their power. All of them in handcuffs now. All of them facing federal charges. His phone rang. Patricia Williams. "Are you watching?" "I'm watching." "This is because of you, Marcus. Because you didn't back down. Because you pushed when everyone told you to be careful." Patricia's voice cracked with emotion. "You changed everything. We changed everything. All of us together." At 8:30 a.m., Marcus arrived at Apex Technologies to find the lobby transformed. Employees had gathered spontaneously, watching the news coverage on every available screen. When Marcus walked through the doors, the crowd parted like the Red Sea and then erupted into thunderous applause. Raymond Jenkins was there, tears streaming down his face. Michelle Carter stood beside Catherine Reynolds, both women crying openly. James Wright pushed through the crowd to grip Marcus's hand. "You did it," James said. "You actually did it." "We did it," Marcus corrected. "Every single person who spoke up, who documented injustice, who refused to be silenced. This belongs to all of us." He made his way through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting embraces, meeting the eyes of people who had suffered for so long and were finally seeing justice done. By the time he reached the elevator, his own eyes were wet. In his office, Marcus found an envelope waiting on his desk. No return address, no postmark, just his name written in elegant script. He opened it carefully, half expecting another threat. Instead, he found a letter written on expensive stationery. "Mr. Thompson, you don't know me, but I know you. I've watched your story unfold over these past weeks with a mixture of hope and terror. Hope because you proved that powerful men can be held accountable. Terror because I've spent 15 years living under the thumb of one of the men arrested this morning. I am the wife of Richard Davidson, former CFO of Meridian Technologies. For years, I've known about his involvement in the Founders Circle. I've seen the documents, heard the phone calls, witnessed the contempt he holds for anyone he considers beneath him. And I've been too afraid to say anything. But watching you, a man who had every reason to stay hidden and safe, risk everything to expose the truth, has shown me that fear is a choice. Silence is a choice. And I'm choosing differently now. Enclosed, you'll find copies of documents that Richard kept in our home safe. Meeting notes, financial records, communications that prove the Founders Circle has been operating for over 20 years. I've already sent copies to the FBI, but I wanted you to have them as well. You deserve to know the full scope of what you've uncovered. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for reminding me that one person can make a difference. A friend." Marcus stared at the letter for a long moment, then opened the thick stack of documents that accompanied it. What he found made his blood run cold. The Founders Circle wasn't just a network of corrupt executives. It was a deliberate, organized conspiracy to maintain white male dominance in the tech industry. Meeting notes detailed strategies for blocking diversity initiatives across multiple companies. Financial records showed coordinated campaign contributions to politicians who opposed workplace discrimination laws. Communications revealed plans to destroy the careers of minorities, and women who rose too high too fast. And at the center of it all, mentioned repeatedly as a founding member and strategic mastermind, was a name Marcus had never expected to see. Senator William Crawford, chairman of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Marcus reached for his phone and called Patricia. "We have a problem, a much bigger problem than we realized." At 11:00 a.m., Marcus convened an emergency meeting with Patricia Special Agent Chen and a team of federal prosecutors who had been brought in to handle the expanding investigation. "Senator Crawford," Agent Chen's face had gone pale. "You're certain about this?" "The documents are authentic. I've had 2 independent experts verify them." Marcus spread the papers across the conference table. Crawford wasn't just aware of the Founders Circle. He helped create it. He's been providing political cover for these men for over 2 decades. "This changes everything," one of the prosecutors said quietly. "We're not just talking about corporate crimes anymore. We're talking about corruption at the highest levels of government." "Which is exactly why we need to move carefully," Chaco, Agent Chen cautioned. "A sitting United States senator is not someone we can simply arrest. There are protocols, constitutional considerations, political realities." Political realities. Marcus's voice rose with barely contained fury. "This man has been protecting predators for 20 years. He's used his position to shield criminals from accountability, and you want to talk about political realities?" "I want to talk about winning," Agent Chen replied firmly. "If we move too fast, if we make a single mistake, Crawford's lawyers will tear our case apart. He'll claim political persecution, he'll turn himself into a martyr, and he might actually walk free." Marcus forced himself to take a deep breath. "Then what do you suggest?" "We build an airtight case. We gather more witnesses, more documents, more evidence than Crawford's entire legal team can possibly refute. And then we bring charges so overwhelming that even his political allies won't be able to save him." "How long?" "Weeks, maybe months." Marcus closed his eyes, thinking about all the people Crawford had helped victimize over the years, all the careers destroyed, all the lives damaged. The idea of waiting even one more day felt unbearable. But Patricia was right. Justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about making sure the guilty couldn't escape. "Fine," Marcus said. "We do this right, but I want updates every single day, and the moment we have enough evidence, we move. No more delays." At 2:30 p.m., Bradley Harrison landed at San Francisco International Airport in the custody of U.S. Marshals. Marcus watched the live coverage from his office, seeing the man who had tormented him being led through the terminal in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. Bradley's face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. 3 weeks on the run had stripped away the arrogance, the confidence, the certainty that he was untouchable. What remained was a broken man facing the consequences of a lifetime of cruelty. A reporter shouted a question as Bradley was led to a waiting vehicle. "Mr. Harrison, do you have any comment on the arrests of your Founders Circle colleagues?" Bradley stopped. The marshals tried to keep him moving, but he planted his feet and turned to face the cameras. "Marcus Thompson thinks he's won," Bradley said, his voice ragged but defiant. "He thinks he's exposed some grand conspiracy and saved the world, but he doesn't understand anything. Men like me built this industry. Men like me created the wealth and innovation that everyone takes for granted, and men like me will rise again long after Thompson is forgotten." He smiled, and despite everything, there was still malice in it. "Enjoy your victory, Thompson. It won't last." The marshals pulled him away, and the coverage cut to commentary, but Marcus couldn't stop staring at the screen. Even now, even facing federal charges and certain imprisonment, Bradley Harrison couldn't let go of his hatred. Couldn't accept that he had been wrong. Some people, Marcus realized, were simply beyond redemption. At 4:45 p.m., Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Jennifer Collins appeared in his office doorway looking healthier than the last time he had seen her. The fear that had haunted her eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked like peace. "Mr. Thompson, I wanted to thank you personally for everything." "You don't need to thank me, Jennifer. You're the one who came forward. You're the one who risked everything to tell the truth. Only because you showed me it was possible." Jennifer stepped into the office. "I spent years working for Bradley Harrison, watching him destroy people, telling myself there was nothing I could do. You proved that was a lie. You proved that one person can make a difference. How are you doing really?" "Better. The FBI has me in witness protection until the trials are over. It's strange living under a different name, but it's also freeing. For the first time in years, I don't wake up afraid." "And your daughter?" Jennifer's face lit up. "She's amazing. She doesn't fully understand everything that's happened, but she knows her mother did something brave. She knows her mother told the truth when it mattered." Her voice wavered. "That's the legacy I want to leave her. Not fear, not silence, courage." Marcus stood and embraced her. "You're already leaving that legacy, Jennifer, every single day." At 7:00 p.m., Marcus addressed the employees of Apex Technologies in the main auditorium. Every seat was filled with more people standing along the walls and watching via video feed in other parts of the building. 6 weeks ago, Marcus began, "I walked into this building as a janitor. I pushed a cart through these hallways invisible to almost everyone watching and listening. What I saw broke my heart. A company I had built on principles of inclusion and innovation had been corrupted into something I barely recognized." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "But I also saw something else. I saw people like Michelle Carter, who documented injustice for years while waiting for someone to listen. I saw people like James Wright, who stood up to a bully even when it cost him his dignity. I saw people like Raymond Jenkins, who showed kindness to a stranger simply because it was the right thing to do. His voice strengthened. This company was never defined by Bradley Harrison or men like him. It was defined by you, by your talent, your dedication, your refusal to give up, even when the culture tried to crush you. The transformation we're experiencing now isn't because of anything I did. It's because you were ready. You were waiting. And when the door opened, you walked through it together. He stepped away from the podium and walked to the edge of the stage. I'm not going to stand up here and promise that everything is fixed. Changing a culture takes years, not weeks. There will be setbacks. There will be challenges. There will be moments when it feels like we're sliding backward instead of moving forward. His eyes swept across the crowd. But I promise you this, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not stepping back. I'm not hiding. This company is my life's work, and I will spend whatever time I have left making sure it becomes everything it was always meant to be. A place where talent matters more than background, where diversity is a strength, not a quota, where every single person who walks through those doors knows they are valued, respected, and given a fair chance to succeed. The applause that followed Janitor shook the walls. 3 months later, Marcus Thompson stood before a federal courthouse as Senator William Crawford was led inside to face arraignment on charges of conspiracy, corruption, and obstruction of justice. The investigation had taken longer than Marcus wanted, but the case was airtight. Dozens of witnesses, thousands of documents, a paper trail that stretched back 2 decades. Crawford's face was stone as he passed through the gauntlet of cameras and reporters. He didn't look at Marcus, didn't acknowledge his presence, but they both knew the truth. The empire Crawford had helped build, the network of powerful men who had protected each other for so long, was crumbling. 14 members of the Founders Circle had been arrested. 8 had already pleaded guilty in exchange for reduced sentences. The remaining 6, including Bradley Harrison and Crawford, were preparing for trials that would dominate headlines for months. But the impact went far beyond criminal prosecutions. Across Silicon Valley, companies were scrambling to reform their cultures. Executives who had operated in the Founders Circle's shadow were quietly resigning rather than face investigation. Diversity initiatives that had been dismissed as woke nonsense were suddenly being embraced as essential business practices. The entire industry was confronting truths it had ignored for far too long. Patricia Williams appeared at Marcus's side as Crawford disappeared into the courthouse. "It's really happening," she said quietly. "After all these years, it's really happening. It's only the beginning. There's still so much work to do." "I know, but Marcus, look around you." She gestured at the crowd of supporters who had gathered outside the courthouse, employees from Apex activists, ordinary citizens who had been inspired by the story. "You started something that can't be stopped. Whatever happens from here, you change the conversation. You proved that accountability is possible." Marcus nodded slowly, but his mind was already moving to the next challenge. 6 months later, Bradley Harrison was convicted on all counts: tax evasion, wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement. The judge sentenced him to 23 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 15. Marcus attended the sentencing hearing. He sat in the front row, meeting Bradley's eyes when the former CFO was led away in chains. Bradley stopped. The marshals tried to keep him moving, but he resisted for just a moment. "You think you've won some," Bradley said, his voice barely audible. "I think justice was served," Marcus replied calmly. "That's not the same thing as winning." "It changes nothing. There will always be men like me, always. And there will always be people willing to stand up to men like you. That's what you never understood, Bradley. You thought power came from money and position, but real power comes from principle, from the willingness to sacrifice everything for what's right." Bradley's face twisted with contempt, but before he could respond, the marshals pulled him away. Marcus watched him go, feeling nothing but exhaustion. No triumph, no satisfaction, just the tired recognition that one battle was over and countless more remained. Angela Morrison met him outside the courthouse. Tyler, her son, was with her, healthy, energetic, his leukemia in full remission thanks to the treatments that Marcus's foundation had funded. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know how to thank you," Angela said, tears streaming down her face. "You thanked me by telling the truth. That's all I ever wanted." Tyler tugged at his mother's hand. "Mom, is that the man you told me about, the one who helped us?" Angela knelt down to her son's level. "Yes, baby, this is Mr. Thompson. He's a hero." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not a hero, Tyler. I'm just someone who got tired of staying quiet." He knelt down as well, meeting the boy's eyes. "You know what makes a real hero? Standing up for what's right, even when you're scared. Even when everyone tells you it's impossible. Can you remember that?" Tyler nodded solemnly. I'll remember. 1 year later, Marcus Thompson stood at the podium of the Tech Equity Summit addressing an audience of over 3,000 people, executives, activists, employees, journalists, and policymakers who had gathered to discuss the transformation sweeping through the technology industry. When I started Apex Technologies 30 years ago, Marcus began, I had a dream that talent would matter more than background, that innovation would flourish because diverse perspectives were valued, that a black kid from Oakland could rise to the top based on merit, not connections. He paused, looking out at the diverse faces in the audience. For a while, that dream became reality, and then I made a mistake. I stepped back. I trusted others to protect what I had built, and I watched from a distance as everything I believed in was systematically dismantled. His voice hardened. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to make a promise. The transformation we've seen over the past year, the arrests, the convictions, the cultural reforms, that's not the end. That's the beginning. We have exposed the rot, but we haven't yet built something better in its place. That work falls to all of us. He stepped away from the podium and walked to the edge of the stage, just as he had done at Apex a year earlier. I've been asked many times why I posed as a janitor, why I subjected myself to humiliation and degradation when I could have simply used my power to remove Bradley Harrison from a distance. Marcus smiled. The answer is simple. I needed to remember. I needed to feel what it was like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be treated as less than human by people who believed their position made them superior, His eyes swept across the audience. Every person in this room has power, the power to speak up when you witness injustice, the power to support colleagues who are being marginalized, the power to refuse to participate in systems that degrade and diminish. He pointed to the audience. You don't need to own 67% of a company to make a difference. You just need the courage to tell the truth, the determination to persist when change feels impossible, the faith that justice eventually will prevail. The applause started slowly and built to a standing ovation that lasted over 5 minutes. When it finally subsided, Marcus delivered his closing message. Senator Crawford's trial begins next month. Bradley Harrison is in prison. 12 other executives have been convicted. The Founders Circle has been dismantled. He paused. But here's the truth, there will be other Bradley Harrisons, other Founders Circles, other networks of powerful men who believe they are above accountability. The fight for justice is never truly won. It has to be fought again and again, generation after generation. He straightened his shoulders. I'm 60 years old. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know how I'm going to spend them. I'm going to keep fighting, keep exposing, keep building. And when I'm gone, I'm counting on all of you to carry the torch forward. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow it carried to every corner of the room. My grandmother cleaned houses for 40 years so her daughter could go to college. My mother worked 2 jobs so I could chase impossible dreams. Everything I am, everything I've accomplished stands on the shoulders of women who refuse to accept the limitations others tried to place on them. He looked directly into the cameras that were broadcasting his speech around the world. This is for them, for everyone who was ever told they weren't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. You are enough. You have always been enough, and the world is finally starting to realize it. 2 years after Marcus Thompson posed as a janitor in his own company, Apex Technologies was named the most equitable workplace in the technology industry. Employee satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs. Innovation output had increased by 47%. The stock price had tripled. But the metrics that mattered most to Marcus couldn't be measured in surveys or financial reports. Keisha Johnson, the marketing employee who had been told her braids were too ethnic, was now director of brand strategy. Her natural hair had become an unofficial symbol of the company's transformation. James Wright, the analyst Bradley had forced to kneel on the floor, was now chief financial officer. His first act in the role was establishing a fund to support employees who reported workplace misconduct. Raymond Jenkins had earned his college degree while working full-time as a security supervisor. His daughter Tasha, the one he had mentioned on Marcus's first day as a janitor, had just been accepted to Stanford's engineering program with a full scholarship funded by the Apex Technologies Foundation. And throughout the building, on every floor and in every department, photographs of Marcus in his janitor's uniform hung alongside images of him in his executive suit. A reminder that true leadership wasn't about titles or corner offices. It was about seeing every person as valuable, every role as worthy of respect. On the 2nd anniversary of Bradley Harrison's conviction, Marcus visited the wall where those photographs hung. An employee approached him, a young black woman who had been hired just 6 months earlier. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to tell you something." You're not bothering me. What's your name? Destiny. Destiny Williams. I'm in the engineering department. What did you want to tell me, Destiny? She took a deep breath. When I was in college, I almost gave up on tech. I did an internship at another company, and the culture was so toxic, I thought maybe this industry wasn't for people like me. But then I saw your story on the news. I watched you stand up to Bradley Harrison. I read about everything you had done. Destiny's eyes filled with tears. You made me believe that things could be different, that companies could actually value people for their talent instead of judging them by how they look. That's why I applied to Apex. That's why I'm here. She wiped her eyes. I just wanted you to know that your fight mattered. It mattered to me. Marcus felt his own eyes growing wet. Destiny, can I tell you something? Of course. When I was pushing that cleaning cart through these hallways, there were moments when I wondered if any of it would make a difference. Moments when the humiliation felt unbearable and the obstacles felt insurmountable. I kept going because I believed that somewhere out there, someone like you was waiting. Someone who needed to see that change was possible. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You're the reason I fought. Not the stock price. Not the awards. Not the headlines. You. Every person who looks at this company and sees a place where they can belong. That's the only legacy that matters. On the evening of that anniversary, Marcus returned to the modest house in Oakland where he had grown up. His mother had passed away 5 years earlier, but the house remained in the family maintained by cousins who gathered there for holidays and special occasions. He walked through the room, slowly touching familiar objects, remembering conversations from decades past. In the living room above the fireplace hung the same photograph he had carried in his wallet for 50 years, his grandmother in her maid's uniform, chin lifted, eyes defiant. I did it, Grandma, Marcus whispered. I kept the promise. He sat down in his mother's favorite chair and closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him. The struggles and the triumphs, the setbacks and the victories. 60 years of fighting for a seat at tables where people like him weren't supposed to sit. His phone buzzed. A text from Michelle Carter. The board just approved the Marcus Thompson Scholarship Fund. Full rides for 50 students per year from underrepresented backgrounds. They wanted to call it something else, but I insisted. Your name should be on this. Marcus smiled and typed back, thank you, but the real thanks goes to the students who will walk through doors that used to be closed. They're the future. We're just clearing the path.
슈퍼레단 뛰었다는.
He set down the phone and looked again at his grandmother's photograph. The fight never ends, does it? He said to her image. There's always another battle, another Bradley Harrison, another system that needs to be challenged. But even as he spoke, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of surrender or exhaustion, but the peace that came from knowing he had done everything in his power to make a difference. The peace that came from seeing the next generation pick up the torch and carry it forward. Bradley Harrison was in prison. Senator Crawford's trial was proceeding towards certain conviction. The Founders Circle had been dismantled. And across the technology industry, a new generation of leaders was emerging. Leaders who understood that diversity wasn't a weakness to be tolerated, but a strength to be celebrated. Marcus Thompson, the janitor who had shut down a boardroom, the founder who had reclaimed his company, the warrior who had exposed a criminal conspiracy, stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over Oakland, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in this city, a young person was dreaming of building something that would change the world. Somewhere, a worker was being told they weren't good enough and choosing to prove the doubters wrong. Somewhere, a mother was sacrificing so her children could have opportunities she never had. The cycle continued. It would always continue. But that was okay, because Marcus Thompson had proven once and for all that one person could make a difference, that standing up for what was right was always worth the cost, that justice, no matter how long it took, would eventually prevail. He pulled out his phone and made one final call. Patricia, it's Marcus. I've been thinking about what comes next. What comes next? A foundation, not just for Apex employees, but for everyone. A national initiative to document workplace discrimination, support whistleblowers, and hold powerful people accountable. I want to take everything we learned and make it available to anyone who needs it. Silence on the other end. Then softly, you're never going to stop fighting, are you? I can't. Not as long as there are people who need someone to fight for them. Then I'm in, like always. Where do we start? Marcus looked at his grandmother's photograph one last time. We start by remembering why we're doing this. Not for glory, not for revenge. For every person who was ever told they didn't matter. For every dream that was crushed by people who thought their position made them untouchable. For every child who needs to know that the world can be better than it is. He smiled. We start by telling the truth. and we never, ever stop. Shh. The sun had fully set now, but Marcus Thompson wasn't afraid of the darkness. He had walked through it before. He had emerged stronger every time, and tomorrow, when the sun rose again, he would be ready, because the man who had knelt on a boardroom floor to clean up coffee had proven something that Bradley Harrison and all his allies would never understand. True power doesn't come from money or position or the ability to make others afraid. True power comes from the courage to stand up when everyone else stays silent. True power comes from lifting others up instead of pushing them down. True power comes from believing against all evidence that justice is possible. Marcus Thompson had that power, and nothing, not threats, not intimidation, not all the Bradley Harrisons in the world would ever take it away. The janitor had become a legend, and his legacy would endure forever.